Chapter 254. Challenge the Eight Sects? Marquis Baiyun was surprised when he heard the news. Xiao Hong nodded and said, "Now that the news has spread like wildfire, it has already spread to half of the North Cloud Mansion. Sect Master Sky Origin is going to challenge the 8 great sects of the 4 great spiritual domains at the Immortal Plains 2 days later." When he heard the news, he was stunned for a long time. The 8 sects had a deep foundation and many experts. Given Yuanzong's current foundation, it was difficult for him to be their enemy. Xiao Hong thought. Qin Shujian might ask for help from Marquis Baiyun. After all, he had told Marquis Baiyun what he had told him. If he had the support of the imperial court, the 8 sects wouldn't dare to go too far. However, he never expected that Qin Shujian would be so stubborn. He directly issued a letter of challenge and even sent people to spread the news of the challenge. That's right. The news was spread by Yuanzong. This was no secret to Xiao Hong. As one of the stewards of the Baiyun Mansion, he had a good grasp of the Baiyun Mansion's intelligence. Besides, Yuanzong's actions weren't too secretive. It wasn't difficult for him to find out the truth. Speaking of this, Xiao Hong cupped his hands and said, "Marquis, rumor has it that Qin Shujian is the reincarnation of an almighty. Is this true? It doesn't matter whether he is the reincarnation of an almighty or not. Many experts reincarnate in the past, but they are not their original selves when they are reborn. He is Qin Shujian now, and he will be Qin Shujian in the future." Marquis Baiyun shook his head slightly and didn't give a direct answer. However, since he dares to challenge the 8 sects, he should have some mysterious trump cards. We should pay attention to this. 2 days later, you will go and watch the battle on behalf of the Baiyun Mansion. Yes, Marquis Baiyun. Xiao Hong bowed and accepted the order. In the end, Marquis Baiyun added, "If Yuanzong loses, save his life. I know what to do." "Okay, you may leave." Soon, only Marquis Baiyun was left in the study. Soon, in the study, a black shadow appeared from the ground and then turned into a masked man in black. When he saw Marquis Baiyun, he immediately knelt on one knee and said calmly from behind the mask. Reporting to the Marquis of Qianshan invited 2 formation masters from somewhere and set up a killing array. More than half of the 1,000,000 troops sent by the imperial court were killed, and 2 cultivators of the divine martial realm died. 2 array masters. Marquis Baiyun's eyes narrowed slightly. He should have been very surprised that Marquis Qianshan had an array Dao Grandmaster. After all, for the other party to be able to set up such a huge heaven-sealing earth-locking array, there must be a formation Dao Grandmaster behind them. However, he didn't expect. Marquis Baiyun had Baiyun was Baiyun. Thinking of this, Marquis Baiyun continued. "Continue. The array master of the imperial court who came with the army was defeated and was attacked by 2 array masters of the Marquis of Qianshan. Now, he is seriously injured. The allied forces of the various feudal lords and the imperial court are confronting the rebel army in Thousand Mountains Prefecture. To Baiyun. I'll take my leave." Then, the masked man in black quietly left the study. "Gu Chongqing, you're too impatient. Or do you have someone behind you?" Marquis Baiyun looked confused and didn't look at the scroll on the table. The news that the current human emperor was about to die was no secret. At least, to the Marquis of Northern Cloud and the others, this was an obvious matter. However, even if his lifespan was nearing its end, it was only nearing its end. That Renhuang was far from dying. As long as he didn't die, the human emperor would always be the human emperor. Marquis Qianshan was the first to rebel as one of the 13 prefectures. He would undoubtedly become the target of public criticism. If the human emperor was angry and attacked personally, Qianshan prefecture would be turned into ashes in an instant. But even so, Marquis Qianshan still dared to do this. He must have the confidence to face the human emperor. However, Marquis Baiyun was puzzled. What kind of force was supporting him from behind? Or what kind of powerhouse did he have that he dared to not fear the Renhuang? On the other side, after issuing the letter of challenge, Qin Shujian had been cultivating in Yuan sect. although victory was in his hands after breaking through to the Master Realm. However, it was better to be prepared than to be able to increase his strength. Moreover, after obtaining the top Master Realm formation, he had deduced a lot of things from it with his Master Realm vision. A formation. In fact, it was all-encompassing. However, it wasn't so easy to deduce a formation on the same level as the gods-slaying demon annihilation formation. Even a Master Realm formation was the same. One day before the challenge, the disciples of Yuan sect who went to the Endless Mountain Range to kill monsters had also returned. After all, the Endless Mountain Range that belonged to the Liang Mountain Range wasn't too vast. With the strength of more than 1,000 Spirit God Realm cultivators and 2 Doctrine artifacts, the difficulty of killing monsters had been reduced a lot. In the inherited Martial Hall. This time, we killed a total of 836 monsters in the Spirit Martial Realm. Among them, 253 were in the Airborne Realm, 73 were in the Vision Saint Realm, and 3 were at the peak of the Vision Saint Realm. As for those below the Spirit Martial Realm, there were a total of 5,862 monsters, and they ranged from the first level of the True Martial Realm to the peak of the True Martial Realm. We seized a total of 1,516 beast cores, 873 of which were in the Spirit Martial Realm. Amongst them, every single monster in the Airborne Realm and Vision Saint Realm contributed a single beast core. Besides that, we gathered a huge amount of spirit flowers and herbs, and the exact amount is still being calculated. Su Yuanming reported everything he'd obtained this time. Qin Shujian's expression didn't change at all, but the expressions of the other elders changed drastically when they heard the exact amount. Over 800 monsters at the Spirit Martial Realm. There were even almost 80 at the Vision Saint Realm. What sort of concept was this? This meant that even the 8 sects combined didn't have so many experts. The only difference was, the cultivators of the 8 sects knew how to join forces, and they wouldn't give them a chance to deal with them one by one. Conversely, the monsters weren't very intelligent, and it was easy for them to deal with them one by one. This was also the reason why they were able to obtain such results. If these monsters were intelligent and knew how to form a formation or gather their companions, then these 1,000+ Spirit God Realm cultivators of Yuan sect would absolutely not be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. It could be seen from this. Exactly how great were the hidden dangers of these monsters. Zheng Fang sighed. Presently, it has only been a month since the Spirit region advanced, yet so many monsters at the Spirit Martial Realm have already appeared in the Endless Mountain Range. If the sect master didn't ask us to head over and annihilate them. Once these monsters have formed a large scale in the future, I'm afraid it would be difficult to resist them when a monster tide comes. If it was said that he didn't really agree with Qin Shujian's actions in the past, then at this moment, he didn't have any objections at all. In less than a month, the Endless Mountain Range had already formed such a large scale. If they were to leave it alone, then the number of monsters in the Endless Mountain Range would definitely increase day by day. At that time, another monster tide like the sky-piercing ape would come. Then it would absolutely be difficult for Yuan sect to resist it. This wasn't a wild guess. So long as there was even a trace of possibility, then it was worth being vigilant against. Now, it was naturally extremely beneficial for Yuan sect to annihilate these monsters before the monster tide arose. Even if they had to pay a price to maintain it, it would be worth it. Not to mention, if they could completely digest the gains they obtained from the Endless Mountain Range this time, it would be sufficient to increase their strength greatly. After all, if they refined the beast cores into medicinal pills, it would be enough for many Yuan sect disciples to break through to the next realm. Qin Shujian said. All the gains this time will be stored in the warehouse. If the Alchemy Hall and the Forging Hall need it, you can go to the warehouse to get a batch of resources, especially the supply of medicinal pills. It must be able to keep up with the consumption. At this point, his gaze fell on Xin Yuhua. Elder Yuhua, I wonder how many people in the Alchemy Hall have been promoted to an inferior alchemist, and how many of them can start to refine medicinal pills. Hearing this, Xin Yuhua didn't hesitate for long and immediately replied, Sect Master, there are currently 2 inferior alchemists in the Alchemy Hall, one of whom is a mutant. As for the alchemy apprentices, there are a total of 7 of them. If they want to be promoted to an inferior alchemist, I'm afraid it will take some time. Hearing this, Qin Shujian nodded slightly. In just a few months, there were 2 more low-grade alchemists. This was already very surprising to him. However, it wasn't difficult to get started in alchemy, but it was extremely difficult to reach a certain realm. As Yuan sect grew stronger, if Xin Yuhua was the only superior alchemist in the Alchemy Hall, it would ultimately be insufficient. Besides that, if Xin Yuqing was the only one in the Foundry Hall, it would no longer be enough. At this moment, Qin Shujian already had plans to expand the Alchemy Hall and the Foundry Hall. However, it was just a plan. Before the problem of the 8 sects was solved, everything had to be put aside for the time being. Sect Master, what do you plan to arrange for tomorrow's battle with the 8 sects? Arrangements? Qin Shujian shook his head and smiled faintly. There's no need for any arrangements. Everything in the sect will continue as usual. I can deal with the 8 sects alone. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Originally, when they received the news that Qin Shujian had invited the 8 sects to battle, they thought that the other party had made some arrangements and then combined the power of Yuan's sect to destroy the 8 sects in one fell swoop on the immortal plains. However, looking at the other party's current actions, it seemed as if he was going to fight alone. Zhengfang said in a deep voice, "There are many experts in the 8 sections. Although Sect Master is powerful, it's still too risky to fight alone. If there's a mistake, I'm afraid there will be a huge turmoil in the sect. In the battle on the immortal plains tomorrow, the people of the 8 sects will not be able to return. You just need to stabilize the situation in Yuan sect. I'll take care of the rest. Don't worry too much." Qin Shujian's tone didn't allow for refusal. As for the fact that he was already an array master, he didn't plan to reveal it now. It was better to be safe than sorry. It wasn't that he didn't trust the elders of Yuan sect, but there was no impenetrable wall in the world. If the news leaked out in advance, the 8 sects might not come as promised. Until tomorrow. Qin Shujian was already prepared to let the people of the 8 sects experience the fear of being dominated by an array master. Chapter 255. If it was before Yuan Zong became famous, there weren't many forces who had heard of the immortal plains. After all, it was just a region in the ordinary realm and wasn't worth much attention. Even if the demon disaster happened later, it had been destroyed. However, they had already been wiped out. Those who knew about the undying plains were probably only from the nearby regions. However, the moment Yuan Zong sent out the letter of challenge, the immortal plains spread like the wind to more than half of the Beiyun mansion and made everyone remember this place. This is the immortal plains? Looking at the dark ground under his feet, Peng Qing was a little surprised. After all, compared to the rich spirit qi in the Liang Mountain spirit domain, the spirit qi here was much thinner. It was not much stronger than the ordinary realm, which was really surprising. The place where demons are born will be accompanied by demon qi. The place where the demon qi invades will be destroyed and the spirit qi will no longer exist. There was a demon disaster here before, so it's normal to see such a scene. Dao Nu's voice directly entered Peng Qing's mind from the ring. In terms of knowledge, he was much more knowledgeable than Peng Qing. "Why did you ask me to come here?" Peng Qing asked the question in his heart. Originally, when he was hunting true martial realm cultivators in the other spirit domains, he was exposed occasionally, and was hunted down by some experts. However, with the life-saving means given by Dao Nu, he was able to survive. When he was running for his life, he was very happy. The original mission of killing 10,000 true martial realm cultivators had been completed by 10%, which meant that at least 1,000 true martial realm cultivators had died under his blade. At the same time, Peng Qing's current realm was also a lot higher than other players. He had reached the 7th level of the true martial realm and officially entered the physical invulnerability realm. As his strength increased, the speed of completing the mission became faster and faster. According to his own thoughts, he should continue with the unfinished mission and obtain the inheritance first. However, Dao Nu had asked him to come to the immortal plains for no reason. Today, the 8 sects are besieging Yuan Zone. This is the best opportunity to see the strength of the top experts in the spirit domain. If you can take this opportunity to kill a few spiritual martial realm cultivators, you can speed up the process of receiving the inheritance. Killing spiritual martial realm cultivators can speed up the process? Of course. If you can kill a spirit martial realm cultivator, it would be equivalent to you killing 10 true martial realm cultivators. If you can luckily kill a prominent divine realm cultivator, it would be equivalent to you killing 100 true martial realm cultivators. I see. Hearing this, Peng Qing finally understood why the other party had asked him to come. To put it bluntly, picking up scraps. He would wait for the various sects to fight to the death, and then take the opportunity to pick up the heads. He hadn't thought of this for a while. After all, even though Peng Qing was a cultivator of the outer aura stage and was comparable to a cultivator at the peak of the outer aura stage with the weeping blood blade in his hand, he was still no match for a cultivator who had given birth to a spiritual deity. Therefore, to be safe, the idea of picking up scraps did not even cross his mind. Remember, the timing of your attack must be accurate. Do not easily expose the existence of the weeping blood blade. I understand. Peng Qing nodded slightly. Behind him was a long object that was completely wrapped in black cloth. That was his weapon. Weeping blood blade. Back then, it was only a low-rank spirit weapon, but after drinking the blood of 1,000 true martial realm cultivators, it had already transformed into a middle-rank spirit weapon, and it was even one of the best. According to Peng Qing's own estimation, it shouldn't take long for it to be promoted to a high-rank spirit weapon. When the time came, the power of the weeping blood blade had increased by a large margin. He was still very satisfied with obtaining this inheritance. After all, as his strength became stronger and stronger, more and more cultivators died in his hands. All kinds of precious treasures were dropped by him, and then through the exchange with the players, they were transformed into resources in reality. It could be said that, in reality, Peng Qing was already someone who owned a lot of businesses. All of this, it was all brought to him by this inheritance. Therefore, a trace of obsession rose in his heart to complete this mission and obtain the complete inheritance. When Peng Qing stepped into the immortal plains, there were also a large number of players who came after hearing the news and also entered here. One had to know, the duel between the NPC powerhouses had always been rarely made public. Like now, the matter of a major sect of the spirit realm directly inviting the other 4 major sects of the spirit realm to a battle was even more unprecedented. As the game went deeper, in reality, with the recovery of spirit chi, cultivation was no longer a secret, and the connection between the two was not known by many players. Therefore, almost all the players valued the cultivation methods and martial arts in the game. Now that there was a rare battle, if they didn't come to witness it with their own eyes and then find an opportunity to pick up a wave of leftovers, these players would feel sorry for themselves. In addition to that, the powerhouses of the other native forces also came from all directions. Not for anything else, but also to watch this battle. Although there was still a day before the battle began, a large number of people had already appeared in the immortal plains. Under the suppression of the spirit realm's shackles, the strongest present was at the spirit martial realm, and the weakest was at the true martial realm. Fortunately, with the advancement of the Liang Mountain spirit realm, the spirit chi of heaven and earth flowed backwards, and the immortal plains suffered from the impact of the spirit chi. Although the spirit chi of the demonic plains had not been fully restored, the feeling of suppression had dissipated a lot. Otherwise, it was inevitable that some people with insufficient cultivation would be affected by the demonic chi. Sect Master, now that all sides of the immortal plains have gathered, I heard that there are also divine martial realm cultivators from the great domain coming. There are many people at the mountain gate who want to come and visit, hoping to meet the Sect Master. Reject all the people who want to visit the mountain gate. Say that I'm in seclusion and it's not convenient for me to meet guests. Okay. That's right, how's the situation in Liang Mountain City these 2 days? Qin Shujian suddenly thought of something and could not help but ask. Niu Feng said, The news of the battle has spread, and Liang Mountain City has attracted many people. The inns we opened are basically half full, and we even sold a lot of elixirs and weapons. Hearing this, Qin Shujian's face revealed a slight smile. The more prosperous Liang Mountain City was, the more Sky Origin Sect's profits would be. This was a good thing for him, or for the entire Sky Origin Sect. Then, Qin Shujian asked again, How's the situation in Liang Mountain City during this period of time? Following the arrival of the Carrier Trading Company, other small trading companies have also moved in. Some of the aristocratic families in the spirit realm have also occupied a place, either opening shops or inns. Basically, 70 to 80% of the places in the city are occupied. 70 to 80%, looks like it's still not enough. This is normal. Now that the 8 sects want to attack our sect, many forces are in a neutral state. If we can solve the problem of the 8 sects, Liang Mountain City will definitely prosper. Niu Feng replied with a calm expression. I understand. These 2 days calm the hearts of the people in the sect and don't cause any trouble. Don't worry about other things. I understand. Go! Qin Shujian waved his hand, and Niu Feng immediately cupped his hands and left. In the courtyard, Qin Shujian looked at his life force source. After slaughtering all the monsters in the endless mountain range, the rate of increase of his life force source had slowed down a lot. Until now, it had only increased by about 30,000 points. After this incident, we will have to open the sect again, Qin Shujian thought to himself. Sky Origin Sect was no different from the other large sects in the spirit realm. No matter what, he did not think that he belonged to any of the large sects, especially when he, an array master, was in charge. To him, what Sky Origin Sect lacked the most was people. As long as there were enough people in Sky Origin Sect, they could contribute more life force source, and their strength would continue to rise. But no matter how much they lacked people, they had to wait until the matter of the 8 sects was resolved. Or else, even if Sky Origin Sect opened the sect now, not many people would come in. After all, a sect that was on the verge of destruction at any time, who would have the courage to join? Even the players had to think about the gains and losses. Then, Qin Shujian directly sat on the stone bench, and then closed his eyes to cultivate the Guiyuan ancestral scripture. The upper limit of this mid-level spiritual martial art was the 6th level of the spiritual martial realm, which was the peak of the airborne realm. After he broke through to the array master realm, he found that his understanding of things was very different, including the cultivation of the cultivation method, and the speed was much faster than before. Originally, Qin Shujian did not understand much of the 6th level of the Guiyuan ancestral scripture. But after a few days of cultivation, he found that the things that troubled him were gradually unraveling. Qin Shujian had a premonition. Perhaps he did not need to upgrade his life force source to be able to directly upgrade the Guiyuan ancestral scripture to its current level of perfection. At night, an illusory spirit god stood above the sky of Sky Origin Sect. The spirit chi of heaven and earth surged from all directions, causing the spirit god to slowly grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. The spirit god that was originally only 120 feet tall had now grown to 130 feet tall. At the same time, a powerful fluctuation spread from Qin Shujian's body. The true essence in his dantian was filled up a lot at this moment, and the burning wisdom king Hellfire in the center of his dantian was jumping actively. His physical body also seemed to have opened some secret, and his qi and blood suddenly became boiling. There was even the faint sound of a dragon's roar. Qin Shujian opened his eyes. The courtyard that was supposed to be dark at night seemed to be as bright as day for a moment, but soon this phenomenon disappeared. I broke through! Feeling the changes in his body and the system's prompt, his face was a little surprised. You have trained hard, and the Guiyuan ancestral scripture has reached perfection. Then, Qin Shujian looked at his attributes. In the column that belonged to the cultivation method, the Guyuan ancestral scripture had changed from the original 25th level to perfection. This also meant that this cultivation method relied on himself, and there was no possibility of upgrading in a short period of time, unless he relied on his life force source to deduce, or he could comprehend the next level of the cultivation method by himself. Chapter 256. The next day, in the undying plains, dozens of people flew over from the sky. Their overbearing auras spread out in all directions, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. The people from Celestial Sect are here! The leader should be Zhao Zunji, an expert at the peak of the prominent divine stage. His aura is indeed extraordinary. Looking at the situation, I'm afraid all the experts of Celestial Sect are here. All the elders above the airborne realm are here. Many people were discussing softly, and there were even a few exclamations. Obviously, the power of Celestial Sect was deeply rooted in people's hearts. After all, it was a sect that had existed for thousands of years in the spiritual region. Almost all of the experts in the sect were known by others. However, when they saw the gray-robed elder beside Zhao Zunji, some people were puzzled as they did not recognize the other party's identity. However, some of the more knowledgeable people were startled when they saw the gray-clothed old man. Soon after, their expressions changed drastically. This is Qi-kun! Celestial Sect's Supreme Elder Qi-kun! I didn't expect him to not die. This time, Celestial Sect's intention to destroy Yuan's sect is obvious. If they saw Zhao Zunji, it was within their expectations. Then when they saw Qi-kun, it was completely out of their expectations. The previous sect leader of Celestial Sect was a peak prominent divine stage cultivator hundreds of years ago. He later gave up his position to Zhao Zunji and became the supreme elder of Celestial Sect. Hundreds of years had passed since then. Qi-kun's cultivation level was almost certain that he had entered the god martial arts realm. After all, the lifespan of a spirit martial stage cultivator was at most 1,000 years. Qi-kun had been the sect leader of Celestial Sect for hundreds of years. Now that he had retired for hundreds of years, he should have reached his 1,000-year limit. Now, he was still standing here. Then, there was only one explanation. Qi-kun broke through the 1,000-year limit and broke through the shackles of the spirit martial stage to become an expert of the god martial stage. As for the discussions of others, Zhao Zunji naturally heard it. However, he did not say anything about it. Today was the day of the decisive battle with Sky Origin Sect. Inviting Grand Elder Qi-kun out already meant that he had the intention of uprooting Sky Origin Sect. Now, he was only afraid that Qin Shujian would not dare to come. Speaking of which, it's already the third day. Why haven't the people from Yuan Sect arrived yet? Could it be that they've retreated? What's the hurry? Can't you see that other than the Celestial Sect, the other sects aren't here? That's right. They said it's the third day, but they didn't say the exact time. There's still a long way to go. If you want to watch the show, you have to be patient. While they were talking, another group of experts from another sect arrived. Every woman in this sect seemed to be around 16 years old. They were dressed in thin gauze, but they seemed to be naked. They looked quite coquettish and attracted the attention of many people. Even some of the younger people's eyeballs were about to fall out. F*CK, which sect is this guy from? Do they still want him or not? If they do, I'll betray the sect tomorrow. A player looked at the group of women and felt as if something was tickling his heart, making him feel very uncomfortable. Except for him. Many of the male players had similar thoughts. No choice. If they could enter such a sect, it would be a man's heaven. As for the female players, they all looked at them with disdain. However, the jealousy in their eyes betrayed them. The women of the demon sect are still so attractive. It's a pity that they're all roses with thorns. We can only look at them but not pluck them. Some of the cultivators who knew the identity of these people shook their heads secretly. Within the demon sect, they only took in women. Moreover, they were the coquettish kind. Apart from that, they did not take in anyone else. Moreover, the cultivation method of the demon sect was extremely strange. Any male cultivator who was attracted to them would be treated like a cauldron. Their entire body's essence chi would be sucked clean. All these years, the number of male cultivators who died in the hands of the demon sect was at least 8,000, if not 10,000. It could be said that, however, those who had heard of the demon sect's name all stayed away from them. Sect leader Zhao is really fast. I thought that the demon sect had arrived earlier. I didn't expect the celestial sect to be one step ahead of us. It's just a little closer. Looking at the coquettish woman in front of him, Zhao Zunji's expression remained calm as usual. However, there was a trace of seriousness and undetectable disgust in his eyes. Li Bivois, the current sect leader of the demon sect. A person who looked young but had been the sect leader of the demon sect for more than 600 years. She was a cultivator of the same generation as the Supreme Elder Qikun. To this extent, no matter how good she was at retaining her youth, she should have shown signs of aging. Unfortunately, the cultivation method of the demon sect was really strange. An old witch who was close to 1,000 years old looked no different from those young girls. If one did not know the details, they might really be tempted. However, to Zhao Zunji, his mind was not moved at all. To this, Li Bihua did not care at all. Her eyes were like the spring light flowing in her eyes. Finally, she looked at Qikun and said, I didn't expect that I would have the chance to see the old Elder Qi again today. I'm just going through the motions. Sect leaderly, you don't have to mind. Qikun was like a dying man. He did not even lift his eyelids. His hoarse voice slowly came out. After that, Li Bihua looked at the other people of the celestial sect and retracted her gaze. To be honest, when she saw Qikun, she was shocked. This supreme elder of the celestial sect had not passed away yet. This meant that he had stepped into the god martial realm before her. Soon, as the people of the celestial sect and the demon sect arrived. Not long after, the people of the Silver Moon sect and the Flying Star sect arrived one after another. At this point, 4 of the 8 great sects had arrived. As for the other 4 great sects, no one had come yet. As the party that invited the battle, no one from the Sky Yuan sect had shown up. About 10 minutes later, a person flew in the air. When the other party appeared, many people's faces changed again. The people from the Sky Yuan sect are here. This is the current domain master of the Liang Mountain Spirit region, Qin Shujian. His bearing is really extraordinary. Even when facing the experts of the 4 great sects, he still did not change his expression. However, the Sky Yuan sect did not come alone this time. I don't think so. Seeing that Qin Shujian had come alone, some people were puzzled. Even the seemingly inconspicuous Xiao Hong narrowed his eyes at this moment. To be honest, he originally thought that Qin Shujian would have prepared something in advance. However, he realized that the Sky Yuan sect did not do anything. Now, Qin Shujian had come alone, facing all kinds of mysterious moves. This caused Xiao Hong to have a lot of doubts in his heart. What kind of confidence did he have to let him come here alone? Could it be that he had already broken through the threshold of the prominent divine stage and directly broken through to the god martial realm? As he thought of this, Xiao Hong's attention could not help but fall on Qin Shujian. In the end, it was better if he did not look. However, when he looked, his heart trembled slightly. With his eyesight, when he looked at the other party, it was as if he was looking at a layer of fog. He could not guess the depth of the other party. Could it be that he really broke through to the god martial realm? Seeing this, Xiao Hong thought of his guess just now and was shocked. Even if the other party was really the reincarnation of a powerful person, it was impossible for the realm to rise so quickly. How long had it been since he broke through to the spirit martial realm? At most, it would be a month. In the history of the great 13 prefectures, there had never been such a person who broke through from the spirit martial realm to the god martial realm in a month. You're the sect master of the Sky Yuan sect? Zhao Zunji looked at Qin Shujian in front of him with a cold light in his eyes. This time, the Sky Yuan sect did not send you here to die alone, right? Why are there only 4 sects here? It seems that I came too early. Qin Shujian turned a deaf ear to Zhao Zunji's words. He glanced at the 4 sects with a gentle smile on his face. When his eyes passed by the Rakshasa sect, he did not stop for a moment. Seeing this, Zhao Zunji's face turned cold again. He said in a deep voice, "If you return my sect's Taoist weapon, the mountain-suppressing seal, I might spare your life if the Sky Yuan sect loses. Otherwise, the Sky Yuan sect will no longer exist in the Baiyun mansion." Mountain-suppressing seal? What mountain-suppressing seal? Qin Shujian looked confused. Why do you have to pretend to be confused? So this is what you're talking about. Qin Shujian seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He took out a seal from his storage ring and weighed it in his hand. Then, he clicked his tongue and shook his head. I have a broken seal. But it's hard to say whether it's a Taoist artifact or not. When the mountain-suppressing seal appeared, many people's gazes were attracted to it. Zhao Zunji's gaze landed on it. After a few seconds, he could not suppress his anger. What did you do to my sect's mountain-suppressing seal? Although he knew that his master recognition seal had been broken, he had been in possession of the mountain-suppressing seal for hundreds of years. Even without the master recognition seal, he could feel the changes in the mountain-suppressing seal. The Taoist seal was broken. There was no spirituality at all. Zhao Zunji instinctively thought that this was not the Taoist weapon mountain-suppressing seal. However, he had seen the seal for hundreds of years. How could he be wrong? He thought about what Qin Shujian said. At this moment, his anger was about to burst out of his chest. Qin Shujian smiled and said, "Why don't Celestial Sect give me a few spiritual weapons and I'll return this mountain-suppressing seal to you?" Good, very good. How dare you destroy my sect's mountain-suppressing seal? Today, no one can protect you. Zhao Zunji's chest rose and fell violently. He forcefully suppressed his urge to attack and said each word with a cold expression. A Taoist weapon had been destroyed. To any sect, this was an irreparable loss. If they had destroyed Yuanzhong previously, there was still hope of getting the mountain-suppressing seal back. However, now that the mountain-suppressing seal had been destroyed by some unknown means, even if Yuanzhong was destroyed, this Taoist weapon could not be taken back. As for the people from the other 3 sections, although they were shocked by the destruction of the mountain-suppressing seal, seeing Zhao Zunji's flustered and exasperated expression, they were shocked and felt like watching a good show. Celestial Sect had lost a Taoist weapon. To the other sects, this was a good thing. Chapter 257. Hearing this, Qin Shujian's face turned cold. He kept the mountain-suppressing seal in his hand and looked at Zhao Zunji with his hands behind his back. He sneered, "If anyone from your celestial sect leaves the immortal planes today, it will be my loss. Young man, don't be too arrogant. Be careful of your tongue. An old thing with 1 foot in the grave. Instead of waiting for death in the sect, you dare to come out and make a fool of yourself. Presumptuous." Chikun's turbid eyes turned cold. However, he was an expert who had been famous for many years. He wouldn't get angry just because of a few words. Seeing the Supreme Elder of Celestial Sect being insulted, some of them had a playful smile on their faces. After hundreds of years, not everyone knew Chikun. However, anyone who knew Chikun would know what kind of power and methods the Celestial Sect leader had back then possessed. To this, Qin Shujian couldn't be bothered with him. He looked at the others and said indifferently, "There are still 4 sects that haven't arrived. I'll let you live for a while longer." This time, even Li Bihua and the others didn't have a good expression. It was hard for anyone to smile after being ridiculed like this. After saying a few words, Li Qiye calmly said. Qin Shujian stood motionless like a wooden stake, allowing time to pass bit by bit. Seeing Qin Shujian's attitude of having victory in his hands, some of them frowned. They couldn't figure out where Qin Shujian got his confidence from. Could it be that Yuan Zhong really had some unknown trump card? Even Celestial Sect and the other sects had different thoughts at this moment. Zhao Zunji looked at the calm Qin Shujian and didn't know what he was thinking. According to Celestial Sect's information, Yuan Zhong didn't do anything strange other than killing people in the Endless Mountains a few days ago. Could it be that Yuan Zhong entered the Endless Mountains to plunder resources for Qin Shujian and then forcefully raise his realm in a short period of time? Zhao Zunji could only guess this possibility after thinking about it. If that's the case, you've miscalculated. Thinking of this, he sneered in his heart. So what if a Vision Divine Stage cultivator reached the peak of Vision Divine Stage? Could he still have the chance to overturn the heavens? Even if he had surpassed the prominent Divine Stage, breaking into the Divine Martial Arts realm was the same. The 8 sects joined forces. This wasn't something a God Martial Realm cultivator could deal with. As time passed, the other 4 sects also arrived one after another. Very soon, hundreds of cultivators in the Spirit Martial Realm, including many in the Airborne Realm and even the Vision Divine Realm, intertwined their auras, shaking the void faintly. As for the onlookers, at this moment, they all consciously retreated several tens of feet away, afraid that they would be affected by the battle. It was the same for the players. The difference was, as these players retreated, they secretly turned on the recording function. They were prepared to record the upcoming battle and upload it to the forum. One had to know. News of this battle had already spread like wildfire on the forum. If it wasn't for the high cost of using the teleportation gate, players from other places had already arrived. Qin Shujian, what else do you have to say? Zhao Zunji shouted coldly. Everyone is here, right? Qin Shujian didn't answer the question as he surrounded the experts of the 8 sections. Many of them were emitting a powerful aura, showing their identity as prominent divine stage cultivators. As for the others, like Qikuan, their auras were obscure, as if they were difficult to see through. If he wasn't wrong, these people should be the true foundation of these sections. Tianwu, Rakshasa, Xingji, Shengshan, Feixing, Silvermoon, White Bone, and Gui Yuan, the 8 sects, intercepted and killed my sect's elders, attempting to cause chaos in my Liang Mountain spirit domain. Such a crime! They deserve to be killed! Qin Shujian's expression was indifferent, as if he was announcing something. His voice was like thunder that spread throughout the entire immortal plains. You're about to die, yet you still dare to speak nonsense. Kill! A prominent divine stage expert from the Gui Yuan sect immediately attacked. His 8 feet tall spirit god appeared and struck towards Qin Shujian with a palm. Immediately after, the experts of the various sects no longer hesitated and all unleashed their powerful attacks. Although not everyone was willing to take action. Among the 8 sects, there were at least 20 to 30 cultivators who attacked together. Such a terrifying attack gathered together. Even a divine martial stage cultivator's expression would change. Immediately, everyone looked at this scene. The moment the attack erupted, the terrifying power caused their minds to tremble. Xiao Hong's expression was also somewhat solemn. His eyes were fixed on the changes in the battlefield, as if he was about to attack at any time. Under everyone's gaze, Qin Shujian's body remained motionless. As he waved his right sleeve, the void trembled in an instant. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was stirred up in an instant, and thousands of runes gathered in the void in an instant. The runes were arranged, occupying the 4 directions of heaven and earth. In less than a breath's time, a great array was formed. The moment the great array appeared, endless killing intent surged from it. Terrifying lightning fell from the sky, attacking the experts of the 8 sections. A sudden change. It caused everyone's expression to change. Boom! Earth energy exploded, colliding with the lightning. Powerful fluctuations spread in all directions. Qin Shujian took a step into the air. Behind him, the 1,000 mountain blood was unsheathed and directly floated in the sky. In an instant, the runes hidden in the void suddenly appeared and then connected together. Thunder clouds rolled in the sky, and the terrifying heavenly might caused everyone's heart to tremble. Forming an array with a wave of his hand, an array master! Zhao Zunji's expression was extremely ugly, and his gloomy eyes were faintly filled with shock. Array master? How could the other party be an array master? Not only him, but even Qi-kun could not maintain his original indifference. Endless light burst out from his turbid eyes, and a powerful aura suddenly rose from his body, far exceeding the limit of the prominent divine stage. This is an array master level killing array. We must break it immediately. Without waiting for us, we will all be destroyed here. As Qi-kun spoke, a talisman appeared in his hand, and he immediately crushed it. The moment the talisman was crushed, some kind of shackle seemed to have been broken. A spiritual deity that was 300 feet tall appeared, and then the spiritual deity fused with Qi-kun. The originally illusory spiritual deity now seemed to have substance. The huge palm that was like a palm leaf fan directly bombarded Qin Shujian, who was flying in the air. At the same time, among the Origin Returning Sect, Flying Star Sect, Ultimate God Sect, and White Bone Sect, there was a spiritual deity that was dozens of feet tall. The spiritual deity condensed into a solid spiritual deity and then attacked Qin Shujian. Qin Shujian, who was standing in the void, looked coldly at the five people's attacks. The powerful fluctuations were clearly telling others that they were about to attack. This was not a prominent divine stage cultivator. It was divine martial stage. As he moved his fingers, runes appeared one after another, activating the entire formation. Then, he uttered two words. God Punisher! Boom, lightning fell, and every bolt was as thick as a bucket. The destructive aura was vast and mighty in the sky. A total of 36 bolts of lightning descended on the 5 enormous spiritual deities. The 5 spiritual deities didn't even have the strength to fight back. They were directly shattered by the lightning. Rumble! In the eyes of the others, they only saw the blue glow of lightning occupy their fields of vision. When they recovered from their shock, Qi-kun's group of 5 had vanished without a trace. Dead? The 5 divine martial stage cultivators practically didn't even have the strength to fight back before they were directly obliterated by the lightning. When they saw this, everyone felt as if their minds had been frozen. For a time, they stared blankly at this scene and didn't know what to say. Impossible! Zhao Zun seemed to have gone mad, and Qi-kun's death had completely exceeded his expectations. A great cultivator at the divine martial stage. The true reserves of the celestial sect. He died just like that. He died very straightforwardly and abruptly. When he looked at Qin Shujian's gaze once more, he seemed as if he'd seen something terrifying. On the other side, after he annihilated the 5 spiritual deities with a single strike, Qin Shujian pressed his palm down, and the 3 seals on the mountain soared into the sky while countless strands of saber chi instantly erupted from within them. Subsequently, talisman markings flickered as if the stars were moving. In an instant, lethal saber chi raged through the entire grand formation. In practically an instant, it had turned into an azure purgatory. No matter if it was domain enlightened spirit god realm cultivators or airborne realm cultivators, their energy barriers were practically useless within the grand formation that was densely covered in saber chi, and they were easily annihilated. Zhao Zun soared into the sky with a single step while a golden lotus bloomed beneath his feet, and the light golden barrier directly enveloped his entire body before he charged out of the grand formation. However, it was only a distance of a few hundred meters, yet it was like a distance of 1,000 mountains and rivers. No matter how he urged the golden lotus to flee, he was utterly unable to escape the scope of the grand formation. On the other hand, the golden lotus revolved slowly under the dense saber chi, and 2 seals flickered on the lotus leaves that bloomed from it. On the other side, the expressions of the various sect masters changed violently. Under the attacks of the grand formation, all of them utilized the Tao artifacts of their sects to protect themselves and avoid being harmed by the grand formation. However, not all Tao artifacts were focused on defense. The Divine Polarity sect master held a long spear in his hand with 2 Tao seals circulating on it. As the spear trembled, endless might spread out and annihilated any saber-chi that approached it. Even so, he was forced to retreat repeatedly, and he didn't dare to relax in the slightest. At this moment, he no longer hoped to use the Tao artifact to kill enemies everywhere. He only wanted to use it to protect himself and prevent himself from dying in the Grand Formation. As for destroying the Origin sect, as for seizing the resources of the spirit realm, he tossed all of those thoughts to the back of his mind. The Divine Polarity sect is willing to withdraw. I hope that sect Master Qin can give us a way out and let us live. The Divine Polarity sect master couldn't care less about his dignity, as he shouted loudly while dealing with the attacks of the Grand Formation. The Origin sect is also willing to withdraw. I hope that sect Master Qin can let us live. The Silvermoon sect is willing to withdraw. The Rakshasa sect is willing to withdraw. The Origin sect. Chapter 258. Apart from a few sects, there were only a few. The other sects all began to beg for mercy. But this wasn't a problem at all. The sects of the spirit realm couldn't fight against the Formation Grandmaster. Even a God Martial Realm cultivator wouldn't be a match for a Formation Grandmaster in a formation. Didn't you see? The 5 God Martial Realm cultivators of the various sects died the fastest. If even one of you can leave the immortal planes, the Origin sect will hand over the Mount Lian spirit realm to you. Qin Shujian stood in the air with his hands behind his back, looking down on everyone like a god. His cold voice made everyone's hearts turn cold. Demon slaying! Then, he waved his hand again, and runes flew out, turning the formation around again. Boundless flames emerged from the void and occupied the entire land. Lightning slaying gods. Raging demons slaying flames. This wasn't an ordinary fire, nor was it a spirit fire. It was the bright King Hellfire that could even burn down evil spirits. The Divine Polarity sect master used his energy to form a shield. His Tao artifact spear exploded with power, trying to push back the flames that approached him. But the bright King Hellfire covered the entire void, and it seemed to be everywhere. No matter how tight his attacks were, he couldn't defend against all of the bright King Hellfire. In an instant, the shield shattered, and the Hellfire wrapped around him. In less than 2 breaths, the Divine Polarity sect master was completely enveloped by the Hellfire. Let me go! Let me go! No! With a shrill cry, the spear fell to the ground, corroded by the bright King Hellfire. The Divine Polarity sect master's original position was now empty, with only a fire lotus floating in the air. Seeing this, the remaining experts of the various sects felt their hearts tremble. If the 5 God Martial Realm cultivators were the trump cards of the various sects, and they hadn't shown their faces for hundreds of years and weren't famous in the current cultivation world, then the Divine Polarity sect master was a famous peak vision divine cultivator. Such an expert had died. It was far more shocking than the deaths of those God Martial Realm cultivators. Qin Shujian's expression didn't change at all. He waved his runes again. Dense lightning fell from the sky, and the bright King Hellfire appeared on the ground. Shortly after, the great formation flipped again, as if the stars were shifting. Zhou Tian's constellation suddenly appeared in the sky that was originally occupied by thunderclouds. Following that, stars fell one after another, crashing onto the ground with a loud bang. Rumble! Hundreds of stars fell. Although the largest was only 2 to 3 meters in size, and the smallest was only 3 meters in size, the force of the fall was as if the sky was falling and the earth was splitting. It was an extremely fast speed. The meteorite was wrapped in a layer of terrifying flames. What? Zhao Zunji's face turned deathly pale when he saw the meteorite expanding in his line of sight. Even under the protection of the Golden Lotus, he could also feel the aura of destruction. A prominent divine stage great cultivator. In front of this destructive aura, they were as weak as children. Their stable minds were completely shaken and collapsed. The people outside the formation. The moment the stars fell, it was as if they were directly facing the destruction. Retreat! Quick, let's go! Everyone's expression changed drastically. Without thinking, they frantically retreated. However, their gazes remained fixed on the great array. In their line of sight, they saw that the falling stars had completely swallowed Zhao Zunji and the others. In front of their eyes, only the stars, karmic fire, and lightning occupied everything. Boom! The earth trembled. The entire undying plane seemed to have suffered a terrible impact, instantly trembling violently. Not only the undying plane, even the other realms could feel the aura of destruction at this moment. When the dust and smoke dissipated, a huge crater appeared directly there. As for Zhao Zunji and the people of the 8 sects, there was no trace of them. Only a few Tao artifacts were barely floating in the air with divine light. Shortly after, the 1,000 Mountains' blood divine light retracted and returned to its sheath. Qin Shujian stretched out his hand and directly took the Tao artifacts into his hand. Then, he flew into the air and left. As for the great array, it also scattered when he left the scene. There was a deathly silence. Looking at the huge crater, the destructive aura still did not disperse. The sky is about to change. It was unknown who muttered this sentence, but it was especially ear-piercing in this silent place. Immediately it woke everyone up with a start. A Formation Tao Grand Master! Qin Shujian is a Formation Tao Grand Master! All the top experts have fallen on the undying plane, and even the sect guarding Tao artifacts have fallen into Sky Origin's hands. The 8 sects are finished this time. The 8 sects are finished. This was the thought that appeared in everyone's minds. In this battle, practically all the cultivators at the domain enlightened spirit god realm or above had fallen, and the sect guarding Tao artifacts they brought with them had fallen into Qin Shujian's hands. Presently, the remaining experts of the 8 sects could only be said to be insignificant. Such strength coupled with the resources of the 8 sections. Perhaps they could be considered a medium-level power in the spirit region. However, they all understood that the other hostile sects would not give the 8 sects a chance. As a great sect of the spirit region, no one could guess exactly how much resources the 8 sects had accumulated throughout these years. These resources? It was an irresistible temptation to any power. They could foresee it. Once the news of the 8 sects' annihilation spread, what sort of uproar would it cause? However, compared to the survival of the spirit region's sections, the news that Qin Shujian was a Formation Tao Grandmaster would definitely cause more than just the Beiyun Mansion. A newly advanced Formation Tao Grandmaster. It would cause a huge uproar even in the great Zhao 13 constabularies. Formation Tao Grandmaster! Xiao Han's face trembled slightly, and his old eyes were filled with shock. No matter how strong the steward of the Beiyun Mansion was, he couldn't suppress the shock in his heart now. He originally didn't understand where Qin Shujian's confidence came from. But now, he knew. A Formation Tao Grandmaster was his biggest source of confidence. So what if there were dozens of prominent spirit realm cultivators? So what if there were spirit martial realm cultivators? They couldn't even withstand a single blow from a Formation Tao Grandmaster. If you wanted to deal with a Formation Tao Grandmaster, you had to give him no time to set up a formation. However, the possibility of stopping a Formation Tao Grandmaster from setting up a formation was next to nothing. Because a Formation Tao Grandmaster at the first stage could already form a formation with a wave of his hand. Under such circumstances, it was easy to imagine how difficult it was to stop a Formation Tao Grandmaster from setting up a formation. Qin Shujian is a righteous Formation Tao Grandmaster. I have to report this as soon as possible. Xiao Hong thought to himself. He looked at the deep pit left by the formation and turned to leave. If Qin Shujian was a spirit martial realm cultivator, he might not even care so much. After all, although there weren't many spirit martial realm cultivators, as the lord of the Beiyun Mansion, the Marquis of Beiyun had many spirit martial realm cultivators under his command. However, a Formation Tao Grandmaster was completely different. Xiao Hong had a premonition. If this news were to spread, what kind of uproar would it cause? As time went by, the news that Qin Shujian, the lord of the Origin sect, had exposed his identity as a Formation Dao Grand Master and set up a terrifying formation with a wave of his hand, directly burying the experts of the 8 sects, had spread completely. In fact, before this battle began, many people were already paying attention to the progress and the result of this matter. After all, this was related to the resources of a newly advanced spirit domain. If the Origin sect lost, then the spirit domain of Mount Liang was bound to be divided by the 8 sections. On the other hand, the members of the other powers would be able to seize the opportunity to drink a mouthful of soup. With the resources of a spirit domain, even a simple mouthful of soup would absolutely be an irresistible temptation. In the opinion of many, the Origin sect had practically no chance of winning this battle. Even though 1,500 Spirit God Realm cultivators were very formidable, it wasn't as simple as facing 1 or 2 sections. Even if a sect possessed 3 to 5 Vision Saint Realm cultivators, then the 8 sects combined would have a few tens of people. As for Airborne Realm cultivators below the Vision Saint Realm and even Spirit God Realm cultivators, there was no need to mention them. So many experts were added together. Unless the Origin sect possessed over 1,000 Airborne Realm cultivators, then perhaps they would still have the strength to fight. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible for them to resist the Origin sect with just over 1,000 Spirit God Realm cultivators. So, those people who were waiting for the outcome, actually, they were waiting for the news of the Origin sect's defeat. However, when the news really spread, it was unexpected to everyone. Qin Shujian was a Formation Dao Grand Master. A grand formation had directly buried all the experts of the 8 sects, and even the sect guarding Dao artifacts had fallen into the hands of the Origin sect. After they confirmed the veracity of the news, the sects that had originally sent people into the spirit domain of Mount Liang and were prepared to wait for an opportunity to make a move immediately evacuated all of them at the first possible moment, and they didn't dare to stay in the spirit domain of Mount Liang for even a moment. Those powers that had originally intended to take a share of the loot. At this moment, all of them had extinguished the thoughts in their hearts. They possessed a Formation Dao Grandmaster. Not to mention the spirit domain, the Origin sect possessed a pivotal status even in large regions, and it was sufficient to become a top-rate sect that could deter an entire region. Someone who could go against a Formation Dao Grandmaster. Only experts at the Divine Martial Realm and above could accomplish that. As for the remaining people, no matter how many came, they would all die. This was the domineering power of a Formation Dao Grandmaster. Once the Grand Formation was formed, no matter how many horses or armies there were, so long as they stepped into the range of the Grand Formation, then they would be completely transformed into ash. Besides experts at the Divine Martial Realm and above or fellow Formation Dao Grandmasters, there were exceptions. The others were practically unable to go against them. It could be said that the battle on the Undying Plain. Qin Shujian directly used the corpses of Zhao Zunji and the others to establish the Origin sect's position as an overlord. On this day, the 8 sects had been destroyed, and their experts had all fallen. On this day, Qin Shujian revealed the identity of the Formation Dao Grandmaster, shocking the world. On this day, all the Spirit Martial Realm cultivators that didn't belong to the spirit domain of Mount Liang had retreated, fearing that if they were too slow in retreating, it would arouse the suspicions of the Origin sect and lead to the destruction of their sections. On the same day, the news of the 8 sects experts being destroyed spread out, and the remaining sects of the 4 spirit domains directly took the opportunity to attack and occupy the 8 sections. Blood flowed like a river, and the number of casualties was innumerable. The 1,000 years of foundation of the sects was also completely divided up on this day. At this moment, the foundations of the 8 sects were completely wiped out in the Baiyun Mansion. Even Jing Fang and the others felt uneasy when they didn't know what kind of trump card Qin Shujian had, because there were simply too many experts in the 8 sections. However, the moment the formation was formed, the frightening aura was simply unable to be concealed by the Undying Plains. Therefore, The people from the Yuan sect immediately sensed it. Before they could send someone to investigate the situation, Qin Shujian had already returned. After delivering the news of the 8 sects' annihilation, he didn't pay much attention to the others and returned to his courtyard. Quick, immediately send someone to the immortal planes to check out the situation. After a brief moment of shock, Xing Fang immediately ordered. No one objected to this. They also wanted to know what happened in the Undying Plains. It hadn't even been half a day since Qin Shujian left the sect. The experts of the 8 sects were all annihilated. One had to know. This time, the 8 sects came in a mighty manner. Even though Xing Fang and the others didn't leave the mountain gate, their subordinates kept sending information to them. They already had a rough idea of how many experts had gathered this time. After the order was issued, soon the news was sent back. Hearing this news, Xing Fang stopped stroking his beard and his old face was full of astonishment. Array Master! As for Xing Yuqing, when he heard the words, Array Master, he was immediately stunned. But soon, he trembled all over and said excitedly, Sect Master isn't an Array Master, he's a Forging Master! Forging and Array Master were different paths leading to the same goal. Then, he thought of the other party's original identity as a Forging Master. How could Xing Yuqing not understand that in fact, his sect master was already a Forging Master? The Forging Master that he revealed was just the tip of the iceberg. That was the only way. Only then could it explain why the other party was an Array Master, and why he could set up an earth-shattering formation that directly annihilated the experts of the 8 sections. Thinking of this, he was even more excited. Forging Master! In Xing Yuqing's mind, this was already the peak of forging. Even the Pill Cauldron sect didn't have a Forging Master. In the 13 prefectures of the Great Zhao, Forging Masters all had a pivotal position. But for him, more importantly, with a Forging Master here, if the other party could give him a few pointers, then he would benefit endlessly for the rest of his life. On the other side, in the courtyard, Qin Shujian had already taken out all the Dao artifacts that he had obtained this time. There were a total of 12 Dao artifacts. Among them, 8 were 2 sealed Dao artifacts and 4 were 1 sealed Dao artifacts. These Dao artifacts were lying quietly on the stone table or stone bench, as if they were broken and didn't move at all. Obviously, a god-slaying demon-slaying great array not only annihilated the experts of the 8 sects, but also made these Dao artifacts feel fear. Qin Shujian casually picked up a 1 sealed Dao artifact, and a system notification appeared in his ears. When he first had the mountain suppressing seal, there was also a system notification that it had been converted into luck points. It was just that he didn't have this idea at that time, so he ignored the notification. But now, looking at so many Dao artifacts, Qin Shujian felt that he could slowly experiment with them one by one. So, when the system notification appeared, Qin Shujian directly muttered in his heart to convert. You've received 50 luck points. Looking at the luck points that had been transferred to his account, his expression froze for a moment. 50 luck points. It wasn't much, but it wasn't little either. If he had a spirit artifact in hand, 50 luck points would be able to cultivate a 1 sealed Dao artifact. In other words, converting a 1 sealed Dao artifact was probably the cost price. After having a calculation in his heart, Qin Shujian's gaze fell on the other Dao artifacts. At this moment, a sense of fear emerged from all the Dao artifacts. Just now, a Dao artifact had disappeared for no reason, and there wasn't even the slightest bit of aura left. This made them feel the aura of destruction. Suddenly, some Dao artifacts couldn't help but want to escape. But, when the Dao artifact moved, Qin Shujian waved his hand and cast an array formation, stopping it in midair. This wasn't a profound array formation. It was just an ordinary array formation that he had comprehended when he was studying the god-slaying demon annihilation array. But even if it was an ordinary array formation, when used by an array formation master, it was destined to be extraordinary. Since you're so active, then I'll choose you. Qin Shujian used his vital essence to directly grab the long spear that was suspended in midair. If he remembered correctly, this was the Tao artifact of the Shinji sect. Previously, it was almost devoured by the Wisdom King Hellfire. After that, it was he who took action to fish out this Tao artifact, preventing the Tao seal from being destroyed and the spirituality from being destroyed. However, even if he tried to save it, it would still be difficult for him to escape this calamity. There were 2 Tao seals engraved on the long spear, and an invisible killing intent was hidden in the spear, showing that this was an unparalleled treasure. You've discovered a 2-sealed Tao artifact that can be converted into a certain amount of luck points. Do you want to convert it? Convert! As soon as he thought about it, the long spear disappeared from Qin Shujian's hand without any resistance. You've received 100 luck points. 100 points? Seeing this, he couldn't help but frown. If converting a 1-sealed Tao artifact to 50 luck points was considered a break-even, then converting a 2-sealed Tao artifact to 100 luck points was considered a loss. It seems that the more I convert a Tao artifact, the more I lose luck points. Thinking of this, Qin Shujian's gaze immediately fell on one of the remaining 7 2-sealed Tao artifacts. A long sword floated in the air and was immediately burned by the Wisdom King Hellfire. He completely ignored the fear and begging of the Tao artifact and allowed it to be engulfed by the Wisdom King Hellfire. After a long time, the Tao seal dissipated, the spirituality was destroyed, and a fire lotus floated in the air. After withdrawing his vital essence, the long sword directly fell to the ground. Qin Shujian held the fire lotus with one hand and directly absorbed it. Rumble! The vital essence in his dantian rumbled like thunder, and the Wisdom King Hellfire took root and swayed. The spirit god that was born in his mind also received a lot of nourishment at this moment, and became even stronger. Although the spirit god didn't appear. However, he could also sense that the current spiritual deity had grown to at least 150 feet tall. The effect of the mountain-suppressing seal before was equivalent to refining 3 evil spirits. Now, the 2-sealed Tao artifact gave me the equivalent of 10 evil spirits. Although my realm is now at the peak of the 6th level of the spirit martial realm, my divine sense shouldn't be much worse than a cultivator at the peak of the vision divine realm. I can be considered a different kind of vision divine realm cultivator. Sensing the changes in his body, Qin Shujian was also in a good mood. Although with his identity as a formation master, the strength of the peak of the vision divine realm could only be said to be average. But, in his opinion, formation was always a supporting role, and one's own cultivation realm was the foundation. Not to mention anything else. With a higher realm, one could live longer than others. After transforming a 1-sealed Tao artifact and a 2-sealed Tao artifact, and using the Wisdom King Hellfire to devour a 2-sealed Tao artifact, Qin Shujian already had a plan in his heart. It was very obvious. Transforming it into luck points was the most unprofitable transaction. As for using the Wisdom King Hellfire to burn it to increase one's own strength, it was hard to say whether it was a loss or a gain. But one thing was certain. The strength that a 2-sealed Tao artifact could display was definitely not something that an ordinary vision divine realm cultivator could compare to. Subsequently, Qin Shujian's gaze fell on the remaining 9 Tao artifacts, and revealed a smile that he thought was harmonious. Now I'll give you 2 choices, submit or die. Chapter 260. Tao artifacts were not living beings. However, it was still an existence that had given birth to spirituality. Especially the Tao artifacts of the 8 sections. Which one of them had not existed for thousands of years? Their spirituality was extremely strong. When they saw Qin Shujian destroy 3 Tao artifacts so easily, and one of them was even burned with the bright king karmic fire, the mournful wail of the 2-sealed Tao artifacts' spirituality seemed to still reverberate in their senses. Humans were afraid of death. Tao artifacts were also afraid of death. Especially now that the experts of the 8 sects had been wiped out, the master recognition mark that should have existed on them had completely disappeared. It was unlike the mountain-suppressing seal back then, where the master recognition mark still existed and forcefully suppressed the desire to submit. So, when Qin Shujian spoke, all the Dao artifacts chose to submit. Seeing this, a smile appeared on his face as well. For any sect, every additional Dao artifact would increase the strength of the sect. At the same time, it would also increase the luck and foundation of the sect. After that, Qin Shujian picked up the Lotus Platform Dao artifact and dripped a drop of blood on it to make it recognize him as its master. Instantly, there was a certain connection between him and the Golden Lotus. Third grade Golden Lotus, 2-sealed Dao artifact. Looking at the Golden Lotus in his hand, Qin Shujian smiled. This was the Celestial Sect's Dao artifact. In the God-slaying Demon Annihilation Great Array, Celestial sect leader Zhao Zunji relied on the third-grade Golden Lotus to remain unscathed despite being struck by lightning, torn by the Saber Chi, and burned by the bright King Hellfire. Although it was destroyed at the moment when the star fell. But it also showed the strong defensive power of the third-grade Golden Lotus. When it came to attacking, he had the 3-sealed Dao artifact, Thousand Mountain Blood. When it came to killing the enemy, he had the master-level array. The only thing he lacked was a defensive method. Although the immortal Bright King body also had strong defensive power, he did not deduce this characteristic to the point of perfection. Compared to a 2-sealed Dao artifact, it was still a far cry. Now that he had the third-grade Golden Lotus in hand, it could be considered as a true combination of attack and defense. There were no flaws. As for the remaining 8 Dao artifacts, Qin Shujian thought for a while. He also set up a miniature restriction array on each Dao artifact. However, he did not intend to recognize them as his master. Although it was not a burden to have more Dao artifacts, it was not a burden. But for him now, unless it was a Dao artifact with 3 seals or above, it would be very difficult for him to cause any practical changes no matter how many Dao artifacts he had. As for setting up a miniature restriction formation, this was also to prevent these unknown Dao artifacts from escaping. Subsequently, after keeping the Grade 3 Golden Lotus, Qin Shujian stored the remaining 8 Dao artifacts into his storage ring. Then, he left the courtyard and headed towards the weapon hall. Currently, Yuan Sect had 2 halls that were the most popular among the players. One was the weapon hall, and the other was the medicine hall. As for the forging hall, it was actually connected to the weapon hall. Xinyuqing would place the forged weapons in the weapon hall, and then the weapon hall would forge them. Or they could place them in the sect and exchange them for contribution points. Or they could be sold in Liangshan City. When Qin Shujian arrived at the forging hall, there were already many Yuan sect disciples inside. Basically, they were all here to exchange for weapons. Especially for players, the frequency of changing weapons was not slow at all. It was possible that when they died, their weapons would explode. It was also possible that when they fought with other powerful beasts, it would lead to the loss of their weapons. Also, because their strength had increased, their original weapons were no longer able to unleash their full strength. There were all sorts of reasons for this. The only regret was, there were no spiritual artifacts in the weapon hall, and the highest grade was only grade 1. This was mainly because Xinyuqing, the hall master of the forging hall, was still at the level of an intermediate blacksmith. She didn't have the ability to forge a spiritual weapon. This made Qin Shujian feel that there were too few high-grade blacksmiths in the forging hall. Although he was a grandmaster blacksmith, it was impossible for him to just forge spiritual artifacts every day. Not to mention anything else. Just the lack of materials was a problem. If he wanted to forge spiritual artifacts, other than the blacksmith's own strength, he also needed the corresponding materials. Or else, even a grandmaster blacksmith would find it difficult to turn something rotten into something magical, and turn a weed on the side of the road into a spiritual artifact. Sect Master! Greetings, Sect Master! Seeing Qin Shujian's arrival, everyone in the weapon hall saluted and greeted him. Qin Shujian also responded with a smile. Then, under everyone's gaze, he came to the exchange price list and directly changed a few lines on it. Then, he turned and left. As for the people in the weapon hall, looking at the changed exchange price list, they all fell into a short period of shock. Immediately, there was an earth-shattering explosion. Dao artifact can also be exchanged. 2 sealed Dao artifact. Is there any big shot who can spread the knowledge? What is a 2 sealed Dao artifact? 1 sealed Dao artifact purple cloud pearl, 1 million contribution points for exchange. After the initial shock, everyone was shocked once again. This time, they were shocked. Not because of the Dao artifact, but because of the exchange price. 1 million contribution points. This was an astronomical figure for anyone. One had to know. As everyone's strength increased, completing a mission would give at least a dozen contribution points, and at most a few dozen contribution points. As for missions with more than 100 contribution points, it was very rare. Comparing the two, 1 million contribution points was enough for anyone to exchange for it. However, this was only the exchange price for a 1 sealed Dao artifact. The exchange price for a 2 sealed Dao artifact was as high as 5 million contribution points. If I worship the stone statue every day, I can get 1 contribution point in about 30 days, and I can successfully exchange for a 2 sealed Dao artifact in about 410,000 years. No one knew who said this. Inexplicably, everyone felt a burst of sadness, as well as a deep malice from the sect. 410,000 years. How many 410,000 years was a person's life? No. It should be 410,000 years. How many lifetimes would one have to live to gather 5 million contribution points? But soon, these people's spirits were lifted. After all, it was impossible to really rely on a lousy mission and live with a little contribution points every month. Things like collecting heaven and earth spirit treasures, and even ores and beast cores could be exchanged for a lot of contribution points. Even if the contribution points were compared to the base of 1 million, it was pitifully small. However, every little thing adds up to a mickle. Now that the Dao artifact exchange was placed here, with such a goal to look forward to, everyone's heart was at least motivated. Although they didn't know much about Dao artifacts. However, he had clearly seen the power within it before. Whether it was the Qianquan Bao or the Thousand Mountain Blood, the spirit martial realm beasts were pitifully weak in front of these 2 Dao artifacts. If they could get a Dao artifact by their side, then the endless mountain range would definitely be free for anyone to roam freely. Lu Dazhong looked at the 2 sealed Dao artifact called the Devil's Slayer Thousand Calamity Saber and made up his mind. From now on, he would accumulate contribution points and take down this 2 sealed Dao artifact. Now, the further the player went, the slower the increase in level strength. After entering the inner aura realm, they might not be able to rise 1 level in a few months. Under such circumstances, even if they exchanged for a large number of pills and swallowed them, it would be difficult to accumulate strength quickly. Rather than this, it would be better to think of a way to exchange for a Dao artifact. This way, even if his realm stopped at the true martial realm, he would be able to kill a spirit martial realm cultivator with a Dao artifact in his hand. He didn't forget. There was a rumor some time ago. The 8 sects sent out 8 airborne realm fighters to surround and kill the outer sect elders of their respective sects with 3 ritual items. However, the ritual items of their respective sects and clans were able to take on the outer sect elders all by themselves, and the ritual items protected the outer sect elders from harm. It wasn't until Qin Shujian arrived that all the enemies were killed. And that Dao artifact. Rumor had it that it was a 2 sealed Dao artifact. Let's go! After taking a deep look, Lu Daozhong pulled Miao Yuqing's sleeve and turned around to walk out of the weapon hall. Originally, he planned to exchange for a first-grade weapon this time. But he encountered such a thing. In an instant, Lu Daozhong felt that a first-grade weapon was not good enough. Instead of staying here and looking at it more and more annoyed, it was better to leave this place and think of a way to accumulate more contribution points. Ahem, Yuqing, how many contribution points do you have left? Outside the weapon hall, Lu Dezhong coughed twice and asked with an awkward expression. Miao Yuqing rolled her eyes at him and said speechlessly, "Don't even think about it. Even if you and I combined our contribution points, it would only be a fraction of a Dao artifact. Do you really want to exchange for a Dao artifact? You can't say that. Now that the advancement of the realm is getting slower and slower, it might be a problem whether we can enter the spirit martial realm in a few years. If we can get a Dao artifact, it will be much easier to advance in the future. 1,000,000 contribution points is not child's play." "I know." Lu Dezhong smiled embarrassedly. He didn't dare to tell her that his goal was a 2-sealed Dao artifact worth 5,000,000 contribution points. Anyway, this kind of thing could be left for later. If the local disciples of the Sky Origin sect didn't have such a deep obsession with Dao artifacts, then the player's obsession with Dao artifacts could be described as crazy. Everyone knew. With a Dao artifact, almost any dangerous place in the spiritual domain, or the true domain, could be set foot in. Not to mention killing powerful demon beasts, and plundering large amounts of experience points. It could be said that, although 1,000,000 contribution points was very high, in the long run, if they could take this opportunity to get a Dao artifact, they would definitely be able to earn back double in the future. Therefore, when they saw the price of the Dao artifact, all the players began to do missions with all their might, as well as go out to hunt demon beasts and plunder things that could be exchanged for contribution points. For them, 1,000,000 contribution points was a stumbling block. The other players were also competitors. After all, there were only so many Dao artifacts. If other players were to exchange for them first, then even if they had a few million contribution points, there would be no place to exchange for Dao artifacts. Therefore, not only did they have to accumulate enough contribution points, but they also had to do their best to accumulate enough contribution points as quickly as possible. In this way, only then could they be one step ahead of others and obtain the contribution points. Chapter 261. Regarding the change in the mood of the people of Yuan sect. Qin Shujian also saw it. And all of this was exactly what he needed. Because as their realm increased, there were fewer and fewer things in Yuan sect that could satisfy them, causing many people to slack off. Now 8 doctrine artifacts were thrown out. It was enough to arouse the enthusiasm of these people. According to Qin Shujian's estimation, the threshold of 1,000,000 contribution points. If one relied on one person to collect them, it would probably take at least 8 to 10 years. It was almost impossible to think about it. If there was a team, this time could be shortened a little. But no matter what, the 8 doctrine artifacts could be hung on for at least a few years, inspiring others at all times. After that, Qin Shujian went to the boundary of Mount Liang and the Stone Forest, 2 places that were close to the endless mountain range. He erased the demon-slaying rune that he had originally set up and then set up a new invisible formation. This formation, only when monsters rushed out of the endless mountain range would it be activated. Or else, it was the same as not having it on a daily basis. Other than that, he did not do anything else. There should also be a formation to protect the mountain gate. In addition, a formation to gather the spirit chi of heaven and earth cannot be lacking. However, these things still need to be studied, so I can't enter for the time being. On the peak of Mount Liang, Qin Shujian looked down at everything below and thought to himself. To put it bluntly, although he was an Array Dao Grandmaster, he was just a poor Array Dao Grandmaster. Poverty did not refer to money. Instead, it was his own knowledge of the Dao of formations. It could be said that, other than a Grandmaster-level god-slaying demon annihilation formation, Qin Shujian did not know any other formations. He did not even understand the most basic knowledge of formations. If he wanted to collect it, he could naturally collect it. However, there was no need. With his current realm of formations and a Grandmaster-level formation as a reference, it was enough for him to deduce what he needed. Even if this process took a little time. But for the current Qin Shujian, what he did not lack was time. A cultivator at the peak of the airborne realm could live for at least 700 to 800 years. With a Grand Master level formation, even a God martial arts realm cultivator would die. All this time, the biggest threat to him was not the local powerhouses or the 8 sects, but the players who had been mingling in the middle and lower levels. But now, the player's strength wasn't increasing quickly. At the very least, he was far inferior to him. Their only advantage was their overwhelming numbers and their immortality. However, the Tao of Array formations was meant for group attacks. The God-slaying demon-slaying 10,000 spirits annihilation formation that was set up in the Undying Plains was only a compressed version. The original version was enough to set up a formation that covered an entire region in an instant. If given enough time, it wouldn't be a problem to set up an even bigger formation. Therefore, no matter how many players there were, in front of a formation Tao Grandmaster, they could be destroyed with a wave of his hand. In this way. As a result, Qin Shujian didn't feel so pressured. As for the Cosmos Bao, at this moment, he was also silently absorbing spiritual energy. It didn't feel satisfied at all just because it was a Tao artifact. After all, the saber was already a 3-sealed Tao artifact while it was still a 1-sealed Tao artifact. It had unknowingly widened the gap between it and the saber. More importantly, the Heaven and Earth Bao realized that Qin Shujian didn't seem to need it anymore. Or else, he wouldn't give it to that Ergu. This made the Heaven and Earth Bao feel a sense of crisis, which made it involuntarily want to improve its role. Even when Qin Shujian was silently cultivating in Mount Liang, the influence of the other party's identity as a Formation Tao Grandmaster was still fermenting. Formation Tao Grandmaster! Marquis Baiyun, who received the news, was also stunned. There was even some shock on his face. This news was to him. It was also too shocking. Xiao Hong cupped his hands and said, Qin Shujian set up an array with a wave of his hand and killed 5 God martial arts realm cultivators. Hundreds of spirit martial arts realm cultivators were turned into ashes in the array without being able to fight back. Even with a Tao artifact protecting them, they couldn't resist at all. As his words spread out, in the main hall of the Marquis Baiyun's mansion, everyone was shocked. After a long time, Li Guanglan said in a deep voice, Could the rumors be wrong? Maybe he's just a Formation Tao Grandmaster. Are you doubting my eyesight, Master Li? Uncle Xiao, don't get me wrong. It's just that Qin Shujian didn't show his Formation Tao strength before, but now he has become a Formation Tao Grandmaster. It's hard to believe. Seeing Xiao Hong's unhappy face, Li Guangnan explained. Although the other party was a servant of the Marquis Baiyun's mansion, everyone knew that he was one of Marquis Baiyun's trusted subordinates. If it wasn't necessary, he didn't want to offend Xiao Hong easily. Hearing this, Xiao Hong's face softened a little, but he was still unhappy. He said faintly, Although I'm old, forming an array with a wave of my hand is the mark of a Formation Tao Grandmaster. How could I be wrong about this? Forming an array with a wave of his hand, he's indeed at the first level of Formation Tao Grandmaster. Marquis Baiyun said slowly at this time, confirming Xiao Hong's words. Then he continued. I thought he would be the reincarnation of a powerful figure, but I didn't expect him to be the reincarnation of a powerful figure at the Formation Tao Grandmaster level. It seems that this person was a famous expert before he was reincarnated. Hearing this, the others also frowned. Any Array Tao Grandmaster would have a good reputation in history. Although Formation Tao Grandmasters were rare, there were still many such experts after thousands of years. It was obviously not easy to deduce the previous life of a Formation Tao Grandmaster among so many experts. Xiao Hong asked, Marquis, do we need to do anything? Let's wait and see. Marquis Baiyun said first, then he paused and said, If Yuan Zone wants to build a teleportation gate, the major cities in the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain can provide coordinates for him. After saying this, many people's faces changed again. This seemed to be a simple matter, but the meaning behind it was completely different. After all, the teleportation gates in the major cities were built by the imperial court, and they were only for communication between cities. There were very few forces that could intervene in the identity of a sect. At least, in the Baiyun mansion. Even those top sects didn't have such privilege. But now, Yuan Zhong had it. But thinking about it carefully, they felt that it was reasonable. After all, with a Formation Dao Grandmaster, Yuan Zhong was no longer as simple as a sect in the spirit domain. If they left the spirit domain and went to the major regions, they would directly become a top sect. Even if they stayed in the Liang Mountain spirit domain and didn't go out, it would still be difficult to shake their status as a sect. If a Formation Dao Grandmaster was equivalent to a great cultivator in the God martial arts realm, then a Formation Dao Grandmaster. In a sense, he was already a great cultivator in the celestial being realm. And the destructive power he caused was far stronger than that of an ordinary celestial being realm cultivator. It should be known that no matter how strong a great cultivator in the celestial being realm was, he was only one person. His one-on-one attack might be terrifying, but the range it affected was limited. But a Formation Dao Grandmaster was different. As long as he was given time, he could even set up a huge formation that affected a region, or even a mansion. Such an existence. The destructive power it caused was really amazing. Just like the Formation Dao Grandmaster in the Thousand Mountains Mansion, he directly set up a huge heaven-sealing earth-locking formation in the entire Thousand Mountains Mansion. But for a Formation Dao Grandmaster, it was not easy to set up such a powerful formation. It would take an immeasurable amount of time. But it could also be seen from the side. As long as a Formation Dao Grandmaster was given time, it was enough to set up a destructive formation. Even those sects in the large regions almost did not have a great cultivator in the celestial being realm. So, the treatment Marquis Baiyun gave Yuan Zhong at this moment was more like giving face to a great cultivator in the celestial being realm. After announcing this matter, Marquis Baiyun said, "In addition, discuss with Yuan Zhong. Our Marquis Baiyun mansion is willing to provide a certain amount of resources to let that Formation Dao Grandmaster help train some experts in the Formation Dao." "We agree," Li Guang'an and the others replied in unison. This was also another benefit of having a Formation Dao Grandmaster in their mansion. That was to be able to train more talents in the Formation Dao. These were auxiliary cultivators. In fact, they could play a critical role in certain situations. Baiyun Mansion was not weak in the Great Zhao 13 mansions, but it was definitely not very strong. It could only be said to be at the middle level. The reason was, it was because Baiyun Mansion lacked experts and relied on Marquis Baiyun, a great cultivator in the celestial being realm. Although there were many great cultivators in the God martial arts realm behind him. But there were few who could take charge of things alone. Now that a Formation Dao Grandmaster was born in Baiyun Mansion, everyone could foresee that in the future, the Formation Dao would probably prevail in Baiyun Mansion. It could also indirectly improve the strength of Baiyun Mansion on a certain level. After Marquis Baiyun's order. In fact, this matter was still handed over to Xiaohong. After all, in the Marquis Baiyun Mansion, Xiaohong was the closest to Yuan Zhong. Therefore, Xiaohong gladly accepted this matter. On the other side, just as Marquis Baiyun and the others thought, after Qin Shijian's identity as a Formation Dao Grandmaster spread out, it caused a huge sensation. The Formation Dao had already declined in Baiyun Mansion. Among all the Formation Dao cultivators, the strongest was only a first-grade Formation Master. There was not even a Formation Master. Now, a Formation Dao Grandmaster suddenly appeared. It directly caused a stir among the Formation Masters in Baiyun Mansion. Almost at the same time, a large number of Formation Masters and even those who wanted to dabble in the Formation Dao flocked to the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain. But soon, another piece of news spread out. It turned out that Qin Shijian was not only a Formation Dao Grandmaster, but also a Forging Grandmaster who had reached the peak of the Forging Dao. Suddenly, the entire Baiyun Mansion was shaken. Like the Formation Masters, after the Forging Grandmasters received the news, Some of them packed up and headed to the Liang Mountain Spirit Domain. A large number of cultivators came in a mighty manner. It was as if they were on a pilgrimage. Chapter 262. Cold Mountain City. This was a city personally built by Yuanzong. Ever since Qin Shijian single-handedly destroyed the experts of the 8 sects and revealed his identity as a Grand Master of Forging and Array Dao, this city became the most prosperous place in the entire Cold Mountain region. Every day, different people came from all directions. Some came from several spirit regions, while others came directly from large regions. Among these people, there were true martial realm cultivators. There were also spirit martial realm cultivators. There were even divine martial realm cultivators. No matter what level they were at, they came with a respectful attitude and a desire to learn. After all, they were grandmasters. To put it in a more arrogant way, they were already at the peak of existence. Even if they opened up a Dao and passed it down for tens of thousands of years, they were still qualified. This was a grandmaster level figure. Compared to ordinary sky human realm cultivators, he was much more influential. This is Cold Mountain City? An old man dressed in brocade robes stroked his beard with one hand as he looked at the city in front of him. His eyes were full of shrewdness. Behind him, a young man and a young woman followed behind him. Master, is that Grandmaster Qin in Liangshan City? Sect Master Qin should be overseeing Yuanzong. However, Cold Mountain City was built by him. If we want to meet such a figure, we have to start with Cold Mountain City first. As he spoke, Cheng Lang stopped stroking his beard. His eyes kept changing as he looked at Cold Mountain City. In the end, he sucked in a breath of cold air and a look of amazement appeared on his face. Unbelievable! Truly unbelievable! Master, is there something wrong? Behind him, Wei Zimin had a puzzled expression. His handsome face was still somewhat immature. Look at the city in front of you. Maybe you can see something different. Cheng Lang pointed at the city in front of them. He reluctantly withdrew his gaze and turned to his 2 disciples. Seeing their puzzled expressions, he shook his head and shook his head. Then, he looked at the city and sighed. This city in front of us is not as simple as an ordinary city. It is a spirit artifact. At this point, Cheng Lang paused for a moment and explained again. A huge spiritual weapon! Hearing this, Wei Zimin was greatly shocked. He cried out involuntarily. Master means that Cold Mountain City is not an ordinary city. It's a spiritual weapon. Not bad. How can someone forge such a huge spirit artifact? It's impossible for ordinary people, but if a Grand Master were to make a move, it might really be possible. Cheng Lang sighed. What kind of power did a Grand Master forger have? He didn't quite understand it himself. He had been immersed in the art of forging for hundreds of years, but he was only a high-grade blacksmith. He hadn't even reached the threshold of a master blacksmith, let alone a Grand Master blacksmith. Because of this, I heard that a Grand Master artificer was born in the Liang Mountain Spirit region. Cheng Lang immediately rushed over here with 2 disciples. For the sake of it, he hoped to be able to listen to the Grand Master's guidance so that he could break through his own limits in his lifetime and have a glimpse of the Grand Master's mysteries. As for the Grand Master stage, such a thought had never crossed his mind. Grand Master. It was beyond the reach of ordinary people. If he tried to pry into the secrets of the Grandmasters, it would all be for naught. Ignoring the shocked expressions of his 2 disciples, Cheng Lang steadied his mind and walked directly into the city. When he was close to Liang Mountain City, it was as if something had appeared on his body. Cheng Lang raised his head and looked at the sky. What he saw was the usual blue sky and white clouds, but his expression was somewhat dignified. That feeling just now couldn't be wrong. He also didn't believe that his perception would be wrong. This meant that he had already entered the range of the array. However, he couldn't find any trace of the array. In the end, Cheng Lang could only attribute it to the fact that this was the supreme method of a Grand Master array. It wasn't something that a small high-grade blacksmith could see through. At the city gate, there were no guards set up, allowing others to enter and leave as they wished. To this, Qing Lang wasn't surprised. With the power of the Origin sect, there was no need to set up defenses at the city gate, because no one would dare to cause trouble here. Moreover, the city was enveloped by the array, so it was almost foolproof. What a bustling city! There are so many people! Looking at the surging crowd in front of them, as well as the street stalls hawking their wares, the two young disciples were instantly dumbfounded. It was as if this was the first time they had seen such a scene. Qing Lang frowned slightly and said in a low voice, "Don't make a fuss. Follow my footsteps." "Yes." Hearing this, the two immediately shut their mouths and followed closely. Walking in Liang Mountain City, Qing Lang was also quite surprised. This was because along the way, most of the people he passed by emitted a powerful aura. Even if this aura was restrained, he could still sense it. Spiritual martial realm. Almost 60 to 70% of the cultivators were at least in the spiritual martial realm. The rest, they were all in the genuine martial realm. As for cultivators below the genuine martial realm, he didn't see a single one. From the moment he entered the city, Qing Lang had encountered no less than 100 cultivators of the spirit martial realm before he had even finished walking a single street. There were so many powerful cultivators gathered. This caused him to be greatly shocked in his heart. As for the two disciples behind him, they were still all right. After all, the two of them weren't strong and couldn't detect the presence of too many powerful cultivators. At most, they were attracted by the things around them. Bang! Suddenly, a loud noise came from a shop in front of him. Then, a figure rushed out from the shop and rushed out of the city. "This is robbery?" Qing Lang's expression was calm. He was used to this kind of thing. Cultivators were powerful, although most of them had to follow certain rules. However, there were still some unruly people. These people, no matter where they were, there would be no lack of them. "How dare you! How dare you cause trouble in my Liang Mountain City!" More than 10 powerful auras erupted and surrounded that person. The two people in the lead were dressed in green and white robes. The rest were dressed in green robes. The difference was that the green robes were embroidered with clouds and mist, setting off a red half-moon. "TSK, there are really people who don't care about their lives and come to Liang Mountain City to rob." Seeing this, a middle-aged man shook his head and sneered. Hearing this, Qing Lang slightly cupped his hands and asked, "Sir, may I ask who these people are? Are they the city's law enforcers?" He was referring to. It was the dozens of people that had surrounded that cultivator. When the middle-aged man heard this, he turned his head to glance at Qing Lang, and a slightly serious expression appeared in his eyes. However, he smiled and said, "Senior, there's something you don't know. The green and white robes represent the clear sky and white clouds. They're the deacons of the Origin sect's outer court. The rest of them are the elite disciples of the Origin sect. They're dressed in green robes that represent the rising sun. If they're the law enforcers of Liang Mountain City, then it wouldn't be a problem. After all, so long as there's unrest in the city, these people would step forward to suppress it." While he was speaking, that cultivator had been killed on the spot. After all, unless it was a cultivator at the airborne realm or above, he wouldn't be a match for over 10 domain enlightened spirit god realm cultivators. Everything happened quickly. In the end, it fell silent quickly as well. Some people had become accustomed to this since a long time ago. After they saw the law enforcers kill someone who didn't follow the rules, they directly moved their gazes away and continued with their own business. However, some people who just arrived at Liang Mountain City were shocked in their hearts. In the end, a domain enlightened spirit god realm cultivator had been killed so easily, so it was impossible for them not to be shocked. Placed somewhere else, domain enlightened spirit god realm cultivators were experts in their own right, and they could even be considered as sect masters in some mid-level sects of the spirit region. Yet now, they didn't even have the strength to fight back and were directly killed on the spot. They couldn't help but feel shocked. Some people had already sensed Liang Mountain City's ruthless methods. Wei Zimin gulped down a mouthful of saliva and asked in a low voice, "Master, what cultivation realm was that cultivator at?" At this moment, Qing Lang withdrew his gaze as well. Even though he was shocked in his heart, he still maintained a calm expression on the surface, and he replied indifferently when he heard his disciple. "Domain Enlightened Spirit God Realm! Domain Enlightened Spirit God Realm!" Ignoring the shocked expressions of the two disciples, Qing Lang directly led the two of them and found an inn to stay for the time being. Because he'd expected such a situation to occur. Under Qin Shijian's orders, the members of the Origin sect had transformed most of the remaining shops into inns and restaurants. But even then, there weren't enough rooms. They paid a slightly higher price than ordinary places. The three of them could be considered to have stayed for the time being. After that, Qing Lang even directly paid for a month's worth of rooms. Because he wanted to find an opportunity to get in touch with the people of the Origin sect and see if he could take this opportunity to meet the legendary sect master Qin. As for Wei Zimin and Wei Zimin, they knew their master's wish for many years, so they didn't really care about it. Someone like Qing Lang. Now, they could be found everywhere in Liang Mountain City. Qin Shijian stayed in the Origin sect and didn't come out. Those who wanted to visit him didn't receive any news even after they sent their visiting cards. Regarding such a situation, no one dared to have the thought of barging into the Origin sect. After all, the last 8 great sects of the spirit region that had offended the Origin sect had already become history. Moreover, in these people's hearts, they held a great amount of reverence towards sect masters and weren't willing to easily offend them. Therefore, they could only temporarily stay in Liang Mountain City and see if they could find an opportunity to meet sect master Qin. If they could use this opportunity to enter the Origin sect, it couldn't be any better. That's right. Now, many people had the thought of entering the Origin sect. Even some great cultivators of the spirit martial realm had the same thought. Sect masters were comparable to heavenly beings. No matter how strong the spirit martial realm was, they weren't qualified to be compared to heavenly beings. If they could take this opportunity to enter the Origin sect, then the probability of receiving guidance from Qin Shijian would greatly increase. At that time, as long as he was willing to teach them a few words, they would definitely benefit immensely. As for the problem of his age, they had already forgotten about it. Moreover, these people were already convinced that Qin Shijian was the reincarnation of an almighty being. Think about it from another perspective. If the person they were bowing to this time was a supreme expert from thousands of years ago, then it would be easy to accept. Chapter 263. Cold Mountain City is now filled with people from all over. Most of them are blacksmiths and array masters. They should be here for the sect master, Niu Feng said in the Qinwu Hall. He had received hundreds of invitations these days. But according to Qin Shijian's intention, he did not leave any of them. He didn't leave a single one behind and destroyed all of them. As for Xing Yuqing, he looked a little embarrassed. He knew very well why so many blacksmiths had come. At the same time, the sense of crisis in his heart became even stronger. Apart from the fact that his realm had changed from the 5th level of the true martial realm to the 1st level of the spiritual martial realm, strictly speaking, Xing Yuqing was only a middle-rank blacksmith. He had also received a lot of news. Among the people who came, there were many middle-rank blacksmiths, and no shortage of high-rank blacksmiths. For this, the blacksmith's hall master was under more pressure than anyone else. As for Xing Yuhua, apart from worrying about her brother, she did not have much pressure on herself. After all, a young high-rank alchemist like her was considered a genius in the great Zhao 13 prefectures. Moreover, a high-rank alchemist was only one step away from becoming a master alchemist. In one of the sections, a high-rank alchemist was indeed qualified to become an elder. In comparison, Xing Yuqing, on the other hand, was slightly inferior. Ignore them for now. Now that the sect has stabilized, It's time to open the sect and recruit disciples. Elders, when do you think is the best time? In my opinion, 3 months from now is the best time. After pondering for a while, Zheng Fang said slowly, Now that our sect's reputation has soared because of the sect master, I believe many people want to join the sect. 3 months is about the right time. At that time, those who should come will have arrived. The time is just right. The Baiyun mansion was vast. Even if there was a portal to shorten the distance, it would still take a long time to pass the news back and forth across the vast territory. 3 months. This was the time that Zheng Fang had secretly calculated. Hearing this, the others did not object. Seeing this, Qin Shujian nodded and said, If that's the case, then 3 months later the Yuan sect will open its doors and recruit disciples from all over the world. As for the original 6 branches, excluding the demon branch, the other 5 can be expanded appropriately. In addition, Qin Shujian paused, looked at the crowd, and said, I intend to set up corresponding martial arts centers in the cities of the true dominion of Liang Mountain to teach disciples. Open a dojo? Hearing this, many people looked at each other, as if they did not understand what the other party meant. Zheng Fang and Su Yuanming, on the other hand, seemed to have thought of something. Qin Shujian said, Set up a martial arts club in each city to recruit disciples and teach them basic martial arts. If there are suitable and excellent seedlings, they can be recommended to the main sect to become the main sect's disciples. However, the review of the people who recommended him was stricter than the disciples recruited by the mountain gate. Similarly, if someone recommended him successfully, the person who recommended him would also be rewarded with a corresponding amount of contribution points. In this way, the chances of our sect producing talents will be much higher than usual. After saying this, the others also came to a sudden realization. If that was the case, it was indeed a good idea. Moreover, they could charge a corresponding fee for opening a martial arts club to recruit disciples. This was also a long-term benefit for the sect. Zhang Tinia asked in a deep voice. Then, who does the sect master intend to let open a martial arts club in each city? Any deacon disciple of the Yuan sect can apply to open a martial arts club in each city. There are no hard and fast requirements. Qin Shujian said faintly. Currently, almost all the disciples of the Yuan sect were in the true martial realm. Even the last batch of disciples recruited had mostly entered the true martial realm after the Yuan sect had been promoted to a 5th grade force. After all, unlike other sects, the Yuan sect did not recruit young children. Instead, it recruited mostly young people who had a cultivation level. It was just a matter of whether they were high or low. Apart from that, there was no need to talk about the players. The current players, other than those who had just entered the game or those who had died too many times, they were all in the true martial realm. This was another terrifying aspect of the players. Although the high-end combat strength was still lingering in the inner invulnerability realm, and very few were lucky enough to break through to the outer invulnerability realm, this group of people was very close to each other. There was almost no big gap between them. As long as they entered the game at the same time, there would not be a situation where someone was in the 7th level of the true martial realm, and someone was in the 7th level of the basic martial realm. Improvement. This was the improvement of the group. Only those who were lucky or powerful could advance a few more steps on this foundation, but the gap would not be too big. The current players were all in the true martial realm, so they might not be able to see anything. After a few years, they would reach the spiritual martial realm, or even the god martial realm. This group of people would really shock the world. Back to the topic. Given the overall strength of the Yuan sect at this stage, any one of them would be more than enough to be the owner of a martial arts club in a city. It should be known that martial arts clubs were not as powerful as sections. Even martial arts clubs in the spiritual realm were very powerful if they had true martial realm cultivators in charge. Or even, the strongest person in some martial arts clubs was only in the 10th level of the basic martial realm. In the end, martial arts clubs were not even close to being unrated among the forces. In other words, they could not be considered a force at all. They could only be said to be a place of initiation for civilian cultivators. Any civilian could enter as long as they spent some silver. However, most martial arts clubs, more or less, had connections with some sections. The purpose of these martial arts clubs was to provide these sects with an additional channel to provide talents. As for what other sects could do, the Yuan sect could do the same. Also, when the others were silent, Qin Shujian spoke again. In 3 months, the Yuan sect will hold a competition in Liangshan City. As long as you are a blacksmith or a formation master, you can participate. The competition will be divided into blacksmithing and formation. Those who can stand out can become the Yuan sect's consecrator. Those who are unwilling to become the consecrator can listen to my lecture once as a reward for this competition. Boom! As soon as these words came out, everyone's faces were immediately filled with shock. But soon, they thought of the benefits. The people who came to Liangshan City this time were 70 to 80% of the blacksmiths and formation masters in the Beiyun Mansion. There was no lack of powerful people among them. Such people, if they could enter the Yuan sect, the overall strength of the Yuan sect would be greatly improved. Not to mention, beyond the Beiyun Mansion, there were also people who came because of his reputation. The reputation of a Grand Master. They were no longer restricted to one mansion or one region. It was only because the time was too short that the news of Qin Shujian being a Grand Master of 2 paths had not spread out. Otherwise, even the entire 13 great Zhao prefectures would have sent many experts. As for Xin Yuqing, her heart sank, but she did not raise any objections. Such a situation, he had guessed it from the beginning. Now, he had just turned his guesses into reality. Qin Shujian stood up. When he passed by Xin Yuqing, he did not stop at all and directly walked past her. If there are no objections, then you can leave. As for Xin Yuqing, who originally had a bad expression, her eyes lit up slightly. She immediately stood up and left. In the courtyard, the two sat opposite each other. Qin Shujian glanced at the cup of spiritual tea in front of him. The spiritual tea seemed to be pushed by an invisible hand and directly landed in front of Xin Yuqing. Then, he picked up the teacup in front of him and said with a smile, "Come, Elder Yuqing, please." "Thank you, Sect Master." Xin Yuqing was flattered. She picked up the teacup and thanked him repeatedly. As for Qin Shujian, he had already finished the spiritual tea in one gulp. Compared to when he first got the level 3 spiritual tea, he did not like it as much as before. He did not know if it was because he drank too much or because his cultivation had increased. However, it would take time to purchase new spiritual tea. During this period of time, he had to deal with the problem of the 8 sects and deal with the affairs of the Yuan sect. Qin Shujian did not have time to care about these trivial matters. However, he had already made up his mind. In 2 days he would send a message to the carrier trading company and ask them to collect some higher-level spiritual tea. As for the money, with the current foundation of the Yuan sect, Qin Shujian seemed to be able to feel the pride of the other people at the auction in the past. He also had the confidence to call himself a rich man. After putting down the teacup, Qin Shujian looked at the other party and said seriously, "Elder Yuqing, do you know why I asked you to come here?" "Please tell me, Sect Master." Xin Yuqing shook her head and said. If she had not received Qin Shujian's divine thought sound transmission, she would not be sitting here now. However, from the other party's words to the current scene, she already had some guesses in her heart. However, she could not be completely sure. Qin Shujian said, "How long has it been since Elder Yuqing joined the Yuan sect?" "It has been about half a year. In the past half a year, the casting hall has been supported by Elder Yuqing alone. She has also taught many disciples. It can be said that she has worked hard and made great contributions." Qin Shujian nodded. After praising her, he continued to speak. "If I'm not wrong, you are now at the peak of the middle-grade casting master level. I am slow-witted and have yet to understand the mystery of the upper-grade casting master level. In fact, the difference between the middle-grade casting master level and the upper-grade casting master level is only a thin line. Now you are already at the edge. If you want to break through, you only need an opportunity. At this moment, if Xinyu still did not understand the meaning of the other party's words, then she would have lived for decades in vain. Therefore, when Qin Shujian finished speaking, she immediately stood up and bowed to the other party. Sect Master, please give me some guidance. It's not really guidance. It's just a discussion between you and me. Qin Shujian shook his head, then pointed to the stone table in front of him and said, In Elder Yuqing's opinion, what do you think of this stone table? This? Xing Yuqing looked a little confused, as if she did not understand what the other party meant. Seeing this, Qin Shujian shook his head and smiled. He pointed his hand in the air and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered. A rune was formed in an instant. Chapter 264. In the sky. Thunderclouds were faintly condensing. But for some reason, no lightning fell. After a long time, the thunderclouds slowly dissipated and everything became clear again. In the courtyard, Xinyu stared at the stone table in front of her in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. As for Qin Shujian, he retracted his hand and poured himself a cup of spiritual tea. Then, he sat aside and sipped the spiritual tea while waiting quietly for something. As for the stone table in front of him, at this time, it was flowing with brilliance and faintly had a strong power. It's a pity that it's an ordinary material. Even if it's been nourished by spiritual qi, it's still too short to bear the power of a spiritual weapon. Looking at the stone table, Qin Shujian shook his head regretfully. Even with his skills as a forging master, he still couldn't really turn something rotten into something magical and turn it into a spiritual weapon. Or rather, turning an ordinary stone table into a half-step spiritual weapon was already amazing in the eyes of others. It was enough to be praised for turning something rotten into something magical. However, in Qin Shujian's mind, it was still not enough. But it couldn't be helped. Unless it could be soaked in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth for a long time to improve its quality, a half-step spiritual weapon would be the focus of the stone table. After a long time, Xinyu body suddenly shook as if she had woken up from a certain state. Her dull eyes gradually became lively. When she saw everything in front of her, she stood up without thinking. Then, she bowed deeply and said sincerely, Thank you for teaching me, Sect Master. Xinyu will never forget it. Qin Shujian sat on the stone bench without moving an inch and accepted the salute directly. When she stood up again, he said with a faint smile, How was it? Did you learn anything? With this guidance, I've already understood the mystery of a superior forging master. I'll go back and cultivate in seclusion for a few days. I'll be able to break through this realm. Speaking of this, Xinyu smiled confidently. The reason why he was able to break through this threshold so quickly was that Qin Shujian had just revealed the methods of a superior blacksmith to him bit by bit. Xinyu was only a step away from becoming a high-grade blacksmith. Now that he had imparted the Tao, he was able to point out the mysteries within. In that case, as long as he went back and digested it, it would not be a problem for him to break through and become a high-grade blacksmith. This was also the reason why Xinyu bowed so sincerely. At his current age, if he broke through to become a high blacksmith, he might be qualified to become a master blacksmith in the next few hundred years. Once he became a master blacksmith, he would be qualified to establish his own sect. Even the strongest expert of the Pill Cauldron sect was only at this level. Now that the Sky Martial sect had been destroyed, the hatred from the destruction of the Alchemy Cauldron School had dissipated. The only thing he cared about was that he could walk further on the path of forging and spread his legacy. Other than that, if he could break through and become a high-grade blacksmith, then his position as the forging hall master would be stable. After all, an upper-grade blacksmith was already considered the pinnacle of the Northern Cloud Mansion. There were almost no forging masters on the surface. As for the sect leader, Xinyu chuckled inwardly. Other than the sect master in front of her, who was rumored to be the reincarnation of a powerful being, there hadn't been a single array master in the Baiyun mansion for over 1,000 years. Subsequently, Qin Shujian opened his mouth and explained some of the essentials of forging to the other party, and then directly sent Xing Yuqing away. Compared to the array Dao, he only had the realm of an array master and had mastered countless powerful runes, but he could only set up a grandmaster array Dao. However, he was a true grandmaster in the field of forging. As he deduced to the grandmaster level, perhaps this had already exceeded the original scope of the ancestral codex of forging and reached a deeper level. But for him, these were not important. With each breakthrough, Qin Shujian was able to obtain the complete memory inheritance from it, and directly reach the peak of the realm, and his knowledge reserve was not lacking at all. But looking at his own realm of a high alchemist, he secretly shook his head. Compared to the forging and array Dao, the alchemy Dao was obviously much weaker. Although a high alchemist was not weak, it was not enough to cause too much of a stir. Among the people who came this time, there were almost no alchemists, and most of them were either blacksmiths or array masters. However, if he raised the alchemy Dao to the master level and then spread the news, Qin Shujian estimated that it should attract a lot of alchemists to come. But he did not intend to raise the alchemist level so quickly, or rather, he would spread the news after raising the level. In the end, it was still because everything was too fast. And unlike the forging Dao, even if the alchemy Dao reached the grandmaster level, it would not have much of a change in his strength. As for alchemy and medicine, to be honest, Qin Shujian thought that his cultivation and use of the source of life would increase faster. Thinking of the source of life, he looked at his attributes again. In the Battle of the Immortal Plains, the experts of the 8 sects were wiped out, and among them were cultivators of the god martial arts realm. With so many experts dead, he naturally harvested a lot of source of life. But because there were a lot of things going on recently, Qin Shujian did not pay much attention to the changes in the source of life. Now that he looked at it again, the source of life had already reached more than 6 million points. The reason why it could be raised so quickly, although he was not completely sure, he had some ideas. Among them, the god martial arts realm should have provided a lot of source of life. As for the 20 to 30 great cultivators of the vision sage realm, they also provided a lot. As for the cultivators of the airborne realm below, they should not have provided much. With more than 6 million points, there is no sign of a deduction upgrade. It seems that I will have to reach 10 million points to be able to raise the origin returning ancestral canon to another level. It seems that if I want to plunder the source of life in the future, I will have to rely on a large number of Yuan sect disciples to provide it, or I will have to hunt those experts alone. Qin Shujian thought in his heart. With his current realm, he could also feel the weakness of the shackles of the spirit domain. Compared to the powerful shackles of the ordinary realm and the true realm, breaking the shackles of the spirit domain was not difficult. Any sect with a deep foundation had the power to break the shackles of the spirit domain. Similarly, after the spirit domain, there was no so-called domain lord. In other words, if Qin Shujian wanted to break through to the divine martial realm, it would not be as troublesome as before. He would have to accumulate his strength to a limit before he could break the shackles and advance. Although that was the case, he did not intend to advance casually. This was because every time he broke through to the next realm, there would be a qualitative improvement. Such an improvement. It was even given based on the foundation before the breakthrough. In other words, if the foundation accumulated before the breakthrough was deeper, the qualitative change caused by the breakthrough would be stronger. Just like now. Even before swallowing the fire lotus, Qin Shujian was confident that he could fight a cultivator of the illustrious divine realm with his strength of the airborne realm. As for swallowing the fire lotus to advance the spirit domain, ordinary illustrious divine realm cultivators would be a piece of cake. This was the power of the foundation. Moreover, with the sky-high price of the source of life required for every realm advancement in the future, it made him understand what the benefits of having a strong foundation were. Yuan sect's cultivation techniques and martial arts are still too few. There are only a few spirit-level cultivation techniques and martial arts in the spirit domain's large sections. How can they be worthy of the status of a large sect in the spirit domain? Immediately, Qin Shujian thought of something, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. If he didn't remember wrongly, each of the 8 sects had at least 1,000 years of foundation. Now, some people took advantage of the 8 sects experts to destroy them in one fell swoop, and then divided up all the resources of the 8 sections. Although strictly speaking, the actions of the other sects were suspected of taking advantage of the situation, but these sects had always been not on good terms with the 8 sections. At this time, it was completely reasonable to add insult to injury. However, I have always snatched food from the hands of others. No one has ever snatched things from my hands. Qin Shujian's eyes gradually turned cold. These few days, after calming down the aftermath of the 8 sex experts' annihilation, he did not have time to care about these things. But now that all the matters had been dealt with, the resources temporarily stored in the hands of the other sects naturally should be taken back. After all, in the eyes of Sect Master Qin, the things of the 8 sects were already his after the death of Zhao Zunji and the others. Anyone who snatched his things. They were all enemies. Bu Anping could be said to be flushed with success, and the smile on his face did not disappear for several days. This was something that could not be helped. The Fallen Dust Domain had 4 sects: Sky Martial Sect, Origin Returning Sect, Extreme God Sect, and Feather Immortal Sect. Among them, the Feather Immortal Sect was the weakest. In these years, as the sect master of the Feather Immortal Sect, he had been under a lot of pressure. He had to face the threats of the other 3 sects at all times, and even his hair had turned white. In the end, in the Battle of the Undying Plains, the experts of the other 3 sects were all killed, and the 3 sects immediately fell from their position as the major sects of the spirit domain. After receiving this news, Bu Anping was stunned for a moment, but quickly reacted. This was a great opportunity for his Feather Immortal Sect to turn the situation around. Thus, he led the experts of the Feather Immortal Sect to attack the other 3 sections. The result was obvious. The 3 sects were all annihilated. Although the Feather Immortal Sect was not the only sect that attacked, the Feather Immortal Sect, as a major sect of the spirit domain, had taken the most resources. Now, they had collected the majority of the resources of the 3 sections. Moreover, in the Fallen Dust Domain, other than the Feather Immortal Sect, no other major sects of the spirit domain were born. Bu Anping could already foresee this. The Feather Immortal Sect would definitely rise rapidly, and would soon become the true overlord of the Fallen Dust Domain. Such an honor could be said to be the pinnacle of the Feather Immortal Sect's history. Bu Anping was only thinking about it. He could not help but smile. Chapter 265. The Resources of the 3 Sections. It had more than doubled the foundation of the Feather Immortal Sect. As long as they had time to digest it, the Feather Immortal Sect would definitely be able to produce more prominent divine stage cultivators. It was even possible for a divine martial stage cultivator to appear. However, Bu Anping was a little worried. The reason why they were able to destroy the 3 sects was because the experts of the 3 sects had been killed by the sect master Yuan Zong in the Undying Plains. It had caused the deaths of most of the top experts of the 3 sects, and even the sect protection Dao artifact had fallen into the hands of Yuan Zong. Or else, the Feather Immortal Sect wouldn't have been able to take down the 3 sects so easily. If they were to seriously investigate what he had done, it would be equivalent to indirectly picking Yuan Zong's peaches. This matter. If Yuan Zong were to investigate, it would definitely be a hidden danger. However, the Feather Immortal Sect wasn't the only sect that had taken action this time. The destruction of the 8 sects had involved dozens of different sections. As such, the probability of Yuan Zong being able to investigate was even smaller. After all, too many sects were involved. It wouldn't be easy to investigate. Furthermore, although the 8 sects had been destroyed because the experts of the 8 sects had died in the hands of Qin Shujian, they had also contributed a lot to the destruction of the remaining experts of the 8 sections. there were some matters. It was impossible to completely clear them up. In addition, the fallen dust spiritual region and the other spiritual regions were very far away from the Liang Mountain spiritual region. It would be difficult for a single sect to cross the 4 spiritual regions. The smile on Bu Anping's face faded. All the thoughts in his mind kept rolling. He could understand the hidden danger in this matter. However, it was impossible for him to hand over the things he had obtained unless he had no other choice. In the end, Bu Anping had already made up his mind. If Yuan Zong didn't send any news, he would act as if he didn't know anything. If Yuan Zong sent news, he would act according to the situation. "Sect Master, someone has come to visit!" Suddenly, a deacon came forward and cupped his hands. Hearing that, Bu Anping's heart skipped a beat. He thought it couldn't be. Then, he calmed down and said slowly, "Who is it?" "Yuan Zong's elder Su Yuanming." Yuan Zong. Hearing those 2 words, Bu Anping's mind buzzed. What he wished for came true. Just a second ago, he was still wondering if Sky Origin Sect would send someone over. In the end, in the next second, someone had already arrived. Seeing that Bu Anping didn't reply, the deacon carefully asked, "Will the sect master meet this person? If he doesn't, I'll go and reject him. You don't want to see me?" Bu Anping looked at the other party and laughed coldly. "You dare not to see me? You probably haven't seen a Grand Master level array formation before." Within the main hall of the Feather Immortal sect, when they heard that someone from the Yuan sect had come to visit, almost all the elders were present. Su Yuanming strode into the hall under the guidance of the people from the Feather Immortal sect. There was a faint smile on his face the entire time. He did not look to the left or right. Instead, he cupped his hands towards the person in the middle. "Sky Origin Sect Su Yuanming greets Sect Master Bu of the Feather Immortal Sect." After saying that, he stood in the hall with his hands behind his back. Even though there were many airborne realm and even prominent divine realm experts on his left and right, there was no trace of fear on his face. Such an attitude. This caused many people to frown. Bu Anping smiled slightly and said, "Men, give Elder Su a seat." "No need." Su Yuanming directly refused and said, "This time, I've only come to inform your sect of one thing. There's no need to go through so much trouble." Seeing that, even Bu Anping frowned. His expression seemed to be a little ugly. In his eyes, Su Yuanming definitely hadn't stepped into the 4th level of the spiritual martial realm. In other words, he was only a spiritual god. A spiritual god. To put on such an attitude in front of so many airborne realm experts and prominent divine realm experts. The reason for this was because the other party had great confidence in himself. That was the benefit of having a top force behind him. In the past, the people from the Feather Immortal sect could also put on such an attitude in front of other forces. However, the tables had turned today. It was the Feather Immortal sect that was being treated like this. Thoughts flashed in his mind. Bu Anping withdrew the smile on his face and said indifferently, "Then, Elder Su, please tell me why you've come to my Feather Immortal sect this time. The experts from the Sky Martial sect, Shinji sect, and Gui Yuan sect all died at the hands of my sect. However, your sect took this opportunity to destroy the 3 sects and seize their resources. Such actions are unavoidably against morality." Su Yuanming stood with his hands behind his back and said calmly, "In half a month, the Feather Immortal sect needs to hand over 3 divine rank martial arts manuals, 10 high spirit rank martial arts manuals, 30 mid rank martial arts manuals, and 50 low rank martial arts manuals. In addition, 1,200 true rank martial arts manuals and 400 low rank martial arts manuals. As for mortal rank martial arts manuals, forget about them. In addition, there's also 100 million in cash, 3 9th rank spiritual herbs, 9 8th rank spiritual herbs, 37th rank spiritual herbs, and a combination of 6th rank and below 6th rank spiritual herbs worth 300 million. As mentioned above, the ores are the same as the spiritual herbs." Boom! Once those words were spoken, the expressions of everyone in the hall changed. No matter how calm Buamping was, his face turned gloomy at that moment. His heart was faintly trembling. They were here to take the resources of the 3 sections. They were here to take the opportunity to rob the Feather Immortal sect. The resources that they asked for, even if it was a third of it, would be enough to empty a large sect of the spirit domain. 9th rank spiritual herbs, 9th rank ores, and divine rank martial arts manuals. If it was possible. Buamping wanted to make a move right now. However, he couldn't. Or rather, no sect in the spirit domain dared to make a move against the origin sect. Once the Array Master came out. Not to mention Spirit Martial Realm cultivators, even God Martial Realm cultivators would die if they came. Unless a Heavenly Realm cultivator appeared, there was no way they could resist. However, there were no more than 5 Empyrean Supreme Realm cultivators in the entire North Cloud Mansion, and the sects of Spirit Realm didn't have any Empyrean Supreme Realm cultivators either. After Su Yuanming finished speaking, Buamping took 2 deep breaths before he opened his mouth and said, "Elder Su's words are a little serious. Killing is a common thing in the sect. I have never heard of one faction having to hand over the spoils of another faction after destroying them. I have also never heard of any moral reasoning. Moreover, the resources that you're talking about, even the 3 sects combined don't have that much. You're asking for too much. Sect Master Bu, there seems to be something that you don't understand." "What do you mean by that?" Buamping was instinctively angry when he heard that. No matter what, he was still the sect master. Now that Su Yuanming didn't give him face again and again, it was inevitable that he would be angry. That wasn't all. Even the other elders of the Feather Immortal sect didn't look too good. They all looked coldly at Su Yuanming as powerful and terrifying auras filled the hall. Su Yuanming wasn't afraid and said seriously, "My words are morality. Sect Master Bu hasn't heard of it before, so you should know what I'm going to say now. Elder Su, are you looking down on my Immortal Feather sect? What a great statement. Elder Su, you're not placing my Immortal Feather sect in your eyes. Whether it's true or not depends on what Sect Master Bu thinks. I've already brought the message. If I don't see the resources or something is missing in half a month, then I'll leave." Then, after Su Yuanming said that, he turned around and walked into the hall. The rest of his words were also directly transmitted. "There will be no more sects in the falling dust spirit domain." Boom! Waves of auras erupted. All the elders stood up from their seats and looked at Su Yuanming's back with fire in their eyes. It seemed like they were going to attack at any moment. How presumptuous! When did a tiny domain enlightened spirit god realm cultivator dare to come to my Immortal Feather sect and talk nonsense? You're going too far. Angry words rang out incessantly. However, not a single person attacked. As for Buamping, he sat on the main seat without moving. However, from his gloomy expression and his clenched fists, it was obvious how furious he was. At this moment, he even had the thought of attacking. However, he gave up on that thought as soon as it appeared in his mind. Because he didn't dare! It was easy to kill Su Yuanming, but offending Sky Origin was a disaster. If a Formation Dao Grand Master were to arrive, then even if the entire Immortal Feather sect were to mobilize all of its power, it would still be impossible for them to contend against him. Right at this moment, a terrifying aura erupted from the Feather Immortal sect. An aged voice rumbled like thunder and spread through the entire sect. "How dare you threaten my Feather Immortal sect? Leave your life behind." "Oh no! Supreme Elder." Including Buamping, everyone's expression changed. Then they charged out of the hall without even thinking about it. Even the elders who were furious just now didn't look furious anymore. Instead, their faces turned ghastly pale. The Supreme Elder was the strongest person in the Feather Immortal sect. He was a great cultivator who was half a step into the God Martial realm. Because he was in seclusion all year round, he didn't know about Sky Origin's existence. No one knew when he'd come out of seclusion or how he'd coincidentally heard the commotion in the hall. If he attacked and killed Su Yuanming, when they thought of that possibility, everyone felt a chill run through their bodies. When they charged out, they just happened to see an old man in fluttering white clothes flying through the air. A huge spirit god appeared and launched a terrifying attack towards Su Yuanming. "Stop! Supreme Elder, stop!" Bu Anping roared with a flushed face. However, the Supreme Elder's attack was clearly faster than his speaking speed. Sensing the attack behind him, Su Yuanming's expression turned grave. However, he didn't show any fear. The long blade on his back was unsheathed like a waterfall. Endless lightning wrapped in thousands of blade auras exploded. Like a formless chaotic blade, it wreaked havoc in the void and swept towards the huge spirit god. Amidst the endless chaotic blade auras and lightning, moreover, a cold light that could slash apart the heavens and the earth appeared within it. Like a meteor, it had already slashed into the spiritual god in an instant. Boom! Terrifying fluctuations spread out in an instant. All the strange phenomena disappeared in an instant. When Bu Anping and the others came back to their senses, Su Yuanming was already far away. As for the huge spirit god in the void, it slowly collapsed. The white-clothed old man in the air fell to the ground. Chapter 266. Supreme Elder. Seeing this scene, the faces of the people from the Feather Immortal sect changed. Thinking back to the blade from earlier, Bu Anping felt that he had encountered a fatal threat in that instant. 3-Sealed Dao Artifact. The Sect Protection Dao Artifact of the Origin sect was actually a 3-Sealed Dao Artifact. Although the Supreme Elder was half a step into the Divine Martial Realm, he was unable to withstand the attack of a 3-Sealed Dao Artifact without any precautions. After taking a few deep breaths, Bu Anping immediately ordered, "Do your best to save the Supreme Elder. Then, prepare all of the things that the Origin sect requested. They must be sent to the Mount Liang Spirit Domain within half a month." "Yes." At this moment, no one objected. The Formation Master of the Origin sect had not even made a move. With only a single Sect Protection Dao artifact, he had already crippled their strongest fighting force. Such a difference in strength was enough to make one despair. If they did not follow the Origin sect's request, wait until the Array Dao Grand Master arrives. The Feather Immortal sect would definitely be destroyed. Compared to the 1,000 years of inheritance of the Feather Immortal sect, no amount of resources mattered. "Qin! Book! Sword!" Bu Anping stared at the direction that Su Yuanming had left in. In his heart, he thought of the Origin sect's sect master. The resources that he had asked for. They were much more than what the Feather Immortal sect had received. However, regarding this, he had no way to refuse. The other party clearly wanted to teach the Feather Immortal sect a lesson. Asking for more resources was equivalent to cutting off a piece of flesh from the Feather Immortal sect, warning them what they could and could not touch. On the other side, after Su Yuanming left the Feather Immortal sect, he immediately headed to the next sect. This time, he was not the only person from the Origin sect heading to the 4 spirit domains. However, the Feather Immortal sect was, after all, a great sect. It would not look good for them to casually send someone over. That was why he, an elder, had personally come. However, Qin Shujian was also thinking of Su Yuanming's safety. If someone were to go crazy and try to kill him, the Origin sect would lose an elder. Therefore, the reason why Su Yuanming carried the blood of 1,000 mountains was to protect himself. A 3-Sealed Dao artifact. In a sense, he was already equivalent to a great cultivator of the Divine Martial Realm. The forces that had attacked the 8 sects this time were at least mid-level forces in Spirit Realm. If they were too weak, they wouldn't have the right to divide the resources of Spirit Realm's great sections. Such a force. They all had names and surnames. Yuan Zong only needed to investigate a little and basically, he would be able to find out everything clearly. Just as some people were heading to the 4 great spirit regions. Qin Shujian also went to the mission hall and issued some corresponding missions. Most importantly, it was about setting up dojos in various cities and recruiting disciples to train. After all, the North Cloud Mansion was vast, and the Sky Origin sect was located in a remote area. Some talented people might miss the opening ceremony of the Sky Origin sect due to certain reasons. Then the purpose of opening a martial arts center. It was to recruit as many talents as possible. In addition to the contribution points awarded to the outstanding disciples who entered the main sect, those who served as dojo masters in various places would also be rewarded with contribution points every year. As soon as such a mission was issued, many people in the Sky Origin sect chose to accept it. For the locals, killing monsters to level up was something that didn't exist. Increasing one's cultivation was basically a matter of training step by step. Therefore, serving as dojo masters in various places wouldn't affect one's cultivation. At most, it was just a matter of whether the spiritual energy was dense or not. Relatively speaking, there weren't many players who wanted to accept this mission. After all, for the players, there weren't many who wanted to be dojo masters in their retirement. Cultivating step by step was too slow, and it was far from being as fast as going out to kill monsters. However, there were also some farming players who had some ideas about this. Endless Mountain Range, leading team with 5 inner energy realm cultivators. Leading team now costs 200 contribution points a day. You can bring a maximum of 5 people. As long as you don't deliberately seek death, you can guarantee a stable leveling. If you fail, you will pay 10 times the compensation. 1,000-man Gangs Instance Dungeon Guide, Inner Energy Realm Cultivators Leading Team. 300 contribution points a day. Guaranteed to clear the instance. If you fail, all contribution points will be refunded. In the rebuilt village, a large number of players were calling out to lead teams. Ever since Cold Mountain City was built, it had become a gathering place for the Sky Origin sect disciples. The original village for the outer sect disciples had become one of the gathering places for the players. Ever since the weapon hall had produced a Dao artifact, all the players were desperately trying to earn contribution points. Leading teams was just one of the methods. As the area expanded, other than attacking the Endless Mountain Range, the players could also make a move on some idle small forces. These forces, most of them had bad reputations, or had names that had a bounty in the imperial court. This way, they could head to the local government to receive a reward mission, and they could also farm a certain amount of experience points. It was almost the best of both worlds. However, in order to complete the mission given by the government, they had to uproot these forces. NPCs that belonged to forces that died in the hands of the players could be revived after a period of time. Unless the force token was dropped and the token was destroyed, then they could be truly killed. However, the force token wasn't a guaranteed drop option. Therefore, in order to complete these missions, they often had to go back and forth a few times before they could truly clear the instance dungeon. For the current players, the Inner Energy Realm was already considered a high-level player. Many of them were still at the initial stage of the true martial realm. This level of strength wouldn't be a problem in the true Dominion, but it wasn't easy to level up in the Spirit Dominion. As a result, therefore, there was a market that required high-level players to lead teams. After shouting for about half an hour, Wanjio looked at the 5 true martial realm first stage and second stage players in the team. Then, he greeted the people in the other teams and led a group of people toward the Endless Mountain Range. Ever since the Sky Origin sect experts had entered the Endless Mountain Range and killed almost all the Spirit Martial Realm demon beasts, the threat of the Endless Mountain Range had decreased by a few degrees. Although there was still a steady stream of powerful demon beasts coming from other regions to the Cold Mountain Range Spirit Dominion. However, compared to before, the number of top-notch demon beasts had decreased greatly. As for the 5 Inner Energy Realm cultivators working together, they were enough to deal with demon beasts above the 7th stage true martial realm. As long as they didn't encounter a Spirit Martial Realm cultivator or get surrounded by a large number of demon beasts, they would be able to move unimpeded in the Endless Mountain Range. The temptation of the Dao artifact. It was much greater than Qin Shujian had imagined. In the entire Sky Origin sect, not only the sect players, but even the deacon elders were now trying their best to earn the corresponding contribution points to obtain the Tao artifact. As for the disciples of the other branches, except for the demon vein, they would also go to the main branch to take on missions. Because they weren't too far apart, Qin Shujian didn't plan to set up a mission hall in the other branches for the time being. This involved the issue of contribution points, so it wasn't something that could be done by just appointing 1 or 2 people. At this moment, Xiaohong, who had received the order from the Marquis Beiyun mansion, had already paid a visit. "Sect Master Qing!" Seeing Qin Shujian in front of him, Xiaohong immediately cupped his hands and bowed. If it was in the past, with his identity as a steward of the Marquis Beiyun mansion and a great cultivator of the God Martial realm, he wouldn't need to bow to a sect master of the Spirit Dominion. Even if the other party was the master of the Spirit Dominion, he would at most be polite. After all, no matter how strong the master was, he was only in the Spirit Martial realm. Compared to a great cultivator of the God Martial realm, there was still a long way to go. However, now that he saw Qin Shujian again, Xiaohong had no choice but to treat him with solemn courtesy. Firstly, it was because of Qin Shujian's identity as a formation grandmaster. To a certain extent, he was equal to a great cultivator of the heavenly realm. Secondly, he was the reincarnation of a great figure. A reincarnation of a great figure was at least an unparalleled expert from thousands of years ago. They were definitely above the God Martial realm. Although Xiaohong had lived for hundreds of years, he was just a junior in front of such a great figure. In the Martial Inheritance Hall, Qin Shujian looked at the respectful Xiaohong and said with a smile, "Steward Xiao, there's no need to be so polite. Please take a seat." "Thank you, Sect Master Qing. May I know why Steward Xiao is here this time? Or is there something that the Marquis needs me for?" The news of Sect Master Qin reaching the Grand Master realm has spread throughout the Beiyun mansion. The Marquis was very happy when he heard about it, and specially ordered me to come and congratulate you. Xiaohong laughed. Qin Shujian replied, "The Marquis is so thoughtful. I have a question, but I don't know if it's appropriate to ask." "There's no harm in asking. May I know how to address you?" Xiaohong's face suddenly turned serious. When he spoke, he cupped his hands and his face was full of reverence. Hearing this, Qin Shujian did not reply immediately. After a while, he smiled faintly and said, "Steward Xiao, you're being too serious. I'm the sect master of the Sky Origin sect, Qin Shujian. I'm sorry for being rude." Xiaohong's face turned serious and he smiled. Then, he seemed to relax a little and said, "I'm here on the Marquis's order. I have something to discuss with you." "What's the matter?" "I heard that Sect Master Qin is an Array Grand Master. The Marquis feels that the Array Dao in the Beiyun Mansion is declining. He doesn't want the Array Dao to end. There are some talents in the Beiyun Mansion who are interested in the Array Dao. I hope Sect Master Qin can give them some guidance," Xiaohong said calmly. "As a reward, the Beiyun Mansion is willing to give you 2 Grand Master Array Dao, 5 upper spiritual level cultivation skills, 1 lower divine level martial skill, and 2 level 9 ores." Such a reward was not cheap at all. However, if they were facing an Array Grand Master who was comparable to a heavenly being realm expert, they had to give something equivalent. Not long after Xiaohong finished speaking, Qin Shujian did not seem to think too much. He nodded and said, "This is not a big problem. I just don't know how many people the Marquis will send and what level they can reach. The Beiyun Mansion will send 30 people, including 5 intermediate Array Masters. It would be best if they can cultivate 1 or 2 upper Array Masters. Okay, I'll give the Beiyun Mansion 2 upper Array Masters in 3 years. Thank you, Sect Master Qin." Chapter 267. Xiaohong left. Just like how he came quietly. The purpose of his visit this time was to convey Marquis Beiyun's message. Regarding this, Qin Shujian naturally had no reason to refuse. In any case, Beiyun Mansion was still under the jurisdiction of Marquis Beiyun. If Yuan Zong wanted to develop in Baiyun Mansion, he could not offend the imperial court. Moreover, during this period of time, Marquis Baiyun Mansion had given Yuan Zong a lot of help, both openly and secretly. And no matter what Marquis Baiyun's purpose, at least until now, he had some friendship with him. Therefore, he immediately agreed to Xiao Hong's request. Of course, the main reason was. And it was because Marquis Baiyun's reward was not low at all. Regardless of whether it was upper spiritual level cultivation techniques, lower divine level martial arts, or even level 9 ores, Yuan Zong needed all of them. Especially level 9 ores. If used properly, there was a high probability that they would be equivalent to upper spiritual weapons. As for such a reward, it must be because Marquis Baiyun knew his identity as a forging grandmaster. However, compared to the reward, what Xiao Hong said at the end was more in line with Qin Shijian's wishes. The coordinates of the teleportation gates of the major cities in the Liang Mountain spiritual domain. It seems that my identity as a formation grandmaster is really useful, Qin Shijian thought to himself. The coordinates of the teleportation gates mentioned by Xiao Hong could not be the coordinates of the inner city. Generally, the cities with teleportation gates were divided into two coordinates. One was the coordinates of the inner city, which was only used by the imperial court. It was the most important place. The other was not the coordinates of the inner city, which was used by some people in the cultivation world. But even so, there were very few sects who were qualified to get the coordinates of the cities. To Yuan Zong, this was an extremely good thing. Because this meant that if a teleportation gate was opened in Liang Mountain City, it could be connected to the teleportation gates of all the cities in the Liang Mountain spiritual domain. In this way, Liang Mountain City would be several times more prosperous. However, the news brought by Xiao Hong. It also made Qin Shijian realize one thing. Originally, he had planned to open a transmission gate in Cold Mountain City. He had also planned to open a transmission gate in the Blue Cloud sect and several other sects. Otherwise, these sects that he had paid for would be quietly destroyed. If the Blue Cloud sect and other sects were destroyed, the properties under their names would also be scattered. Even Yuan Zong would not be able to take over completely. Even if he did, it would require a huge amount of manpower and material resources. In comparison, Qin Shijian was more willing to receive a stable income of 24 million taels of silver every year. But now, however, he didn't have the intention to open up a teleportation door for the other sects, and he intended to replace it with other methods. Besides that, he wanted to summon back the domain enlightened spirit gods that resided in those 12 sections. On the other side, the news that Sky Origin sect was going to hold a competition in Cold Mountain City in 3 months had also spread out. As for the rewards, they were even more tempting. It didn't matter if he became Yuan Zong's consecrator. Moreover, it was an opportunity to listen to Qin Shijian's lecture. This was a great opportunity for both artificers and array formation masters. But if they were to really compare, the former was obviously more important than the latter. If they were able to seize this opportunity to enter the Sky Origin sect and become a reverend of the Sky Origin sect, then they would definitely be able to obtain even more in the future. The former was a long-term development. The latter was a one-time benefit. So long as they didn't have any other intentions, most people would come for the opportunity to become a reverend of the Sky Origin sect. As for the news that the Sky Origin sect would open its gates and recruit disciples in 3 months, it spread out along with the news of the competition. Instantly, even Baiyun Mansion was shaken. The sect is opening its gates and recruiting disciples. In Cold Mountain City, Guancheng was originally tasting food and wine in a restaurant. When he heard the news, he was instantly stunned, and then he stood up and said, "Waiter, the bill!" "Sir, it's a total of 1 silver tael. Keep the change." Guanqing directly threw down 3 silver taels, and then he left the restaurant without looking back. In the past, he would leave. He would either put down the silver taels and leave directly, or he would leave without even paying the bill. The main reason was that with his experience, he rarely took these matters seriously. If things went his way, then he would give a little more. If things didn't go his way, then he would leave directly. Could it be that the people of a small restaurant would dare to compete with cultivators? However, this was Cold Mountain City. It wasn't that Guancheng hadn't seen it before. Some cultivators were too arrogant or used to being overbearing in the past, and couldn't change in a short time. After the incident, they were directly invited to the city's enforcers. As for the consequences, there was no need to say more. In other cities, the enforcers would mostly teach them a lesson. The more serious ones would be sent to prison or something. However, Cold Mountain City was different. No matter whether it was a big or small matter, as long as they dared to cause trouble here, they would be killed on the spot. There was no room for negotiation. Such an iron-blooded method naturally caused many cultivators to complain. However, complaints were just complaints. At least on the surface, no one dared to say anything. After all, the master who was comparable to a heaven realm cultivator was still here. Even if a god realm cultivator came, they would have to obediently wait. As time passed, after the news of Cold Mountain City's iron-blooded method spread, the entire city's appearance suddenly changed. No matter what status one had in the past, they had to abide by the rules of Cold Mountain City. At first, Guancheng wasn't used to it, but he forced himself to adapt. Because he wasn't used to it, they were all dead. After leaving the Cold Mountain City, Guancheng headed straight for the ancient city. Because Cold Mountain City didn't have a transfer gate, if he wanted to use a transfer gate, he would have to go to another city. As an elder of the Northern Spiritual Region's Guan clan, Guancheng was very passionate about the Tao of arrays. After hearing that Qin Shujian was an array master, he didn't care about anything else and directly rushed towards Cold Mountain City, hoping to see the array master. Unfortunately, after arriving at Cold Mountain City for a period of time, not to mention seeing Qin Shujian, he wasn't even able to step into Yuan Sek's mountain gate. Regarding this, although Guancheng was anxious, he still suppressed his impulses. Originally, he had planned to stay in Cold Mountain City for a period of time. He would only make plans for the next step when the competition started. However, Yuan Sek suddenly spread the news that they were opening their mountain gate. Guancheng had no choice but to temporarily leave and return to his clan. The Northern Spiritual Region was very big. In other words, the Cold Mountain City under his feet was actually part of the Northern Spiritual Region. If it was a general term, this place was technically where the Northern Spiritual Region was located. However, if it was broken down, the Northern Spiritual Region would be divided into ordinary regions, true regions, and even spirit regions. Until the last part, where there were no shackles at all. This was the true core of the Northern Spiritual Region. As for the Guan clan, even a big family in the core of the Northern Spiritual Region had a great cultivator of the divine martial realm at its peak. However, as time passed, the strongest great cultivator was only a prominent divine realm great cultivator. However, even so, the Guan clan was also quite famous in the Northern Spiritual Region. Apart from that, the Guan clan also had some connections with the big sects in the Northern Spiritual Region. They also had a powerful force behind them. As a price, the Guan clan had to send a batch of geniuses to the big sects every few years to become the hub of the relationship between the two. However, this time, Guancheng had other ideas. In terms of power, the sects in the big regions were naturally the most powerful. However, this wasn't absolute. Occasionally, there would be some exceptions. Today, Yuan Zong's appearance was an exception in his eyes. A sect with an array Grand Master in charge, even if it only existed in the spirit region, was incomparable to the sects in the big regions. Guancheng counted the days. It was already very close to the time when the Guan clan would send their young descendants to the big sects again. However, now that Yuan Zong was going to open the mountain gate, he immediately had the idea of taking this opportunity to send some of the Guan clan's descendants to Yuan Zong. This way, if he could succeed, then the Guan clan would have a connection with Yuan Zong. Of course, This matter had to be done secretly. If it was exposed, it would undoubtedly offend the original sect. The various forces in the cold mountain city were very complicated. Most of the people who came had a corresponding force behind them. After the news of Yuanzhong opening the mountain gate spread, instantly, many people had the same idea as Guanxing. Things were different now. Before Qin Shujian revealed the fact that he was an array grandmaster, when a big sect in the spirit region opened the mountain gate to recruit disciples, it could only affect a few spirit regions at most. Even if the other party was the spirit region's domain lord, it could at most expand the area of influence. However, after his identity as an array grandmaster was exposed, the news of Yuanzhong opening the mountain gate was no longer limited to just one prefecture or one region. After the news spread, many people immediately used different methods to send the news out. Even more so. Like Guanxing, they directly left the cold mountain city and rushed to the place where their forces were located. Because when Yuanzhong opened the mountain gate, they had to be able to send the younger generation of their forces in. To be able to join a sect with an array grandmaster was undoubtedly equivalent to joining a top force with an Empyrean realm cultivator. Such a force. Even in the entire Great Zhao 13 prefectures, there were only a handful of them. Compared to Yuanzhong, these sects might not even have the chance to open their mountain gate once in decades or centuries. However, once these forces opened their mountain gate, it would attract attention from all directions. This was the influence that a top sect had. This was something that all the sects in the spirit region and even the sects in the big regions did not have. Such sections. Every one of them had thousands of years of history. Some of them even had a history longer than the Great Zhao Empire. If Yuanzhong did not have an existence like Qin Shujian, under normal circumstances, even after hundreds or thousands of years, they might not be able to reach such a force, let alone be on par with them. Just as the news of Yuanzhong opening the mountain gate spread, the sects that had swallowed the resources of the 8 sects finally sent people to the cold mountain spirit region to visit Yuanzhong. Chapter 268. Wu Wanlin, elder of the Feather Immortal sect, greets Sect Master Qin. Beneath the martial bearing hall, an old man in gray clothes who seemed to be in his 40s cupped his hands and said, "Elder Wu, please take a seat." "Thank you, Sect Master Qin." Wu Wanlin cupped his hands again and sat down. Up until now, his heart had been beating wildly. He had no choice but to be nervous. The Supreme Elder was heavily injured and had almost lost his life. The reason was that he had been struck by Sky Origin's sect guarding Tao artifact, which had almost destroyed his foundation. Sky Origin's ruthlessness was well known in the cultivation world. Now that he was here, if he accidentally said something wrong, he might not be able to walk out of the hall. If it weren't for the fact that he was the weakest and had the lowest status among all the elders of the Feather Immortal sect, Wu Wanlin wouldn't have come here no matter what. Looking at Wu Wanlin, who had a calm expression but couldn't hide the nervousness in his eyes, Qin Shujian smiled faintly and said, "I wonder why the Feather Immortal sect has sent Elder Wu here. Please tell me. Earlier, when your sect destroyed the experts of the Sky Martial sect, Shinji sect, and Origin sect, my sect was worried that someone would take advantage of this opportunity to plunder the resources of the 3 sections. Therefore, we took the initiative to seize some of the resources for the sake of returning them to their rightful owners." After sorting out his words, Wu Wanlin coughed lightly and continued, "Because there are quite a lot of resources, my sect has been counting and calculating for the past few days. Only now have we truly finished counting. Therefore, I was sent to deliver the items to Sect Master Qin." As he spoke, Wu Wanlin suddenly stood up and took out 5 spatial rings from his pocket. After that, he took a few steps forward and handed them over. Qin Shujian sat there without moving. His divine sense directly landed on the 5 spatial rings. Then, he wrapped them up and moved them to his hand. Divine sense manipulation. This was a simple technique of spirit martial realm cultivators. After all, Airborne realm cultivators could even lift themselves into the air, let alone a few small spatial rings. Those who could do this would have no problem even if they had just entered the spirit god realm. After taking the storage ring, Yi Zichen nodded. Qin Shujian did not check the items, and directly put them away. Soon after, a warm smile appeared on his face as he said, "The way the Immortal Feather Sect acts truly makes me feel ashamed. Elder Wu, if you return, please help me thank your sect master. Sect Master Qin is too courteous." Seeing this, Wu Wanlin's tensed heart relaxed a little. "If there is nothing else, Elder Wu, please return. I'll take my leave." The sudden order to leave made Wu Wanlin realize what reality was. However, this was exactly what he wanted. After clasping hands and saying goodbye, he turned and left. There were already people waiting outside the palace. Seeing that the other party had walked out, the people of Yuan's sect brought him down the mountain. Inside the Qingwu Hall, Qin Shujian waved his hand in exchange for the 1,000 mountain blood. Then, he cut his finger and dripped his blood onto the 5 storage rings. Not long after, a subtle connection was established. After identifying the storage ring as its owner, he immersed his mind into it. Very soon, the items placed in the 5 storage rings immediately appeared in his perception. His divine sense swept across the area. He could roughly estimate the number of items inside. TSK, the Feather Immortal Sect is really secretive. They collected all the items so quickly. The smile on Qin Shujian's face became even brighter. Then, with a thought, 6 cultivation techniques and martial arts appeared in his hand. All of them were of the same grade. They were all low-grade divine rank. For the current him, if he were to cultivate other low-grade cultivation techniques, he would have to spend his life force to deduce and upgrade them. But if he were to cultivate high-grade cultivation techniques, he would be able to rely on himself to cultivate for a short period of time. Unless he reached a place where he could no longer advance, he would need to spend his life force to upgrade. This way, he would be able to save a lot of his life force. In addition, the Yuan sect was now a great sect of the spirit region. To be more precise, it was famous in the entire Beiyun mansion. In the end, there were very few spirit rank cultivation techniques and martial arts in the sect. There was only one divine rank cultivation technique, the Great Desolation Devil Suppressing Seal. No matter how one looked at it, it was too shabby. It was also not very beneficial for the sect's unity. However, now that there was a batch of resources, it could quickly fill up the place. That would be able to quickly fill up the gaps in the library. In addition, various spiritual herbs and ores could also satisfy the needs of the alchemy hall and the smithing hall. Although spiritual herbs and ores above the 7th grade could only be used by grandmasters or even grandmasters, the current Yuan sect only had one high-grade alchemist and one alchemist who was about to become a high-grade alchemist. They did not have the qualifications to use these items. However, Qin Shujian could not guarantee when his hands would be itchy and he would use them to refine spiritual tools or pills for fun. Moreover, these items were not cheap. Naturally, he would not leave them in the hands of the Feather Immortal sect. He put away the 5 storage rings. Then, his gaze fell on the 6 cultivation techniques and martial arts in his hand. Immediately, he chose one of them and opened it. You have learned the low-grade divine rank cultivation technique, Flying Immortal Temple Dao Scripture. You have learned the low-grade divine rank cultivation technique, Ghost God Meditation Scripture. You have learned the low-grade divine rank cultivation technique, 10,000 Saints Visualization Scripture. You have learned the low-grade divine rank cultivation technique, Golden Immortal Soul Shattering Chant. The 4 cultivation techniques and martial arts disappeared. What replaced them was a series of system notifications. Immediately after, Qin Shujian looked at the remaining 2 low-grade divine rank cultivation techniques. However, he did not open them again to learn them. Instead, he put them away. Martial arts and cultivation techniques were different. The path of martial arts was about the quality, not the quantity. A mid-grade divine rank Great Desolation Devil Suppressing Seal was already enough for him to use against his enemies. The reason why he learned the Golden Immortal Soul-Shattering Chant was only because its name attracted him. As expected. After learning this martial art, Qin Shujian discovered that it was an extremely powerful sound wave martial art. When he opened his mouth, he could kill his enemies without them noticing. After silently digesting it, Qin Shujian stood up and left the inherited martial hall. Then, he walked in the other direction of the Yuan sect. That was the location of the sect's treasury. The treasury wasn't constructed in a secret location. It was an enormous building that was constructed in a spacious area. The reason he did this was because he was worried that Liang Shan's advancement would cause the treasury to be destroyed and cause the resources within to be lost. After he became a Formation Dao Grandmaster, he even personally set up a strong formation there, and it was sufficient to stop people with ill intentions. Besides that, there were related people guarding the treasury to ensure that nothing would happen. The treasury is important. Sect Master, please show me your identity token. When Qin Shujian stepped foot into the area of the treasury, the domain enlightened spirit god realm cultivator that stood on guard there directly appeared and obstructed his path. Regarding this, Qin Shujian did as he was told and passed his identity token over. After that person took it and inspected it, he passed it back with both hands while his expression became respectful. Sect Master! Open the treasury! Yes! As the door to the treasury opened, Qin Shujian was the first to step in. The people guarding the treasury were the original bandits, so there was absolutely no problem with their loyalty. As for the fact that even the sect master wanted to inspect his identity token in front of him, it was for the sake of safety. After all, it wasn't a big problem for a cultivator with a high cultivation to change their appearance and bearing. If someone accidentally sneaked in and emptied the treasury, then Qin Shujian would have no place to cry even if he wanted to. After he entered the treasury, Qin Shujian took out all the items within the 5 storage rings. Instantly, the treasury that was originally only filled with 1/10 of the treasury directly occupied 1/3 of the space. However, he'd removed cultivation techniques and martial techniques from all the resources. After he left the treasury, he went to the library again and placed all these things inside. Now that the Yuan sect had been promoted to a great sect of the spirit domain, the library had undergone an adjustment. All the cultivation techniques below the truth rank were placed on the 1st level. The truth rank cultivation techniques were placed on the 2nd level. The 3rd level of the spirit rank. The 4th level of the divine rank. As for the 5th level, it was still empty. Qin Shujian himself hadn't thought of what to put in there. Moreover, even the inner sect elders weren't qualified to set foot on the 5th level at the moment. After he'd taken care of these matters, Qin Shujian returned to the courtyard, took out a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, and placed them neatly on the stone table. He looked at the white rice paper in front of him. With a wave of his hand, subtle runes condensed and fell on the paper. The spirit energy of heaven and earth flowed as the runes fell and poured into the paper. Hum! An invisible wave spread out. The rice paper moved without wind, as if a large invisible hand was holding it up. Then, one by one, they floated up and floated in the air. On each piece of paper, a small rune flickered faintly. The spirit energy of heaven and earth poured in. As time passed, the white rice paper gradually turned light blue. Finally, when the spirit energy of heaven and earth dissipated, they fell back to their original positions one by one. When I have time, I'll have to buy some spirit paper. Otherwise, I'll have to do it myself every time. It's always a troublesome matter. Qin Shujian shook his head and muttered to himself. It was very difficult to use ordinary rice paper to carry high-level cultivation techniques and martial arts. Unless, when writing, one's mind controlled it. As the cultivation technique and martial arts were written, the spirit energy would gather and transform it into spirit paper. But doing so would be very troublesome. A moment of carelessness could cause the paper to crack. Therefore, he directly used the methods of a blacksmith to upgrade ordinary rice paper to spirit paper. But no matter what, it would take time and was a troublesome matter. After making up his mind to buy some spirit paper, Qin Shujian moved the stack of spirit paper in front of him closer. Then, he picked up a brush, dipped it in some black ink, and directly wrote on it. Immersing his mind, he recalled everything about cultivation techniques and martial arts in his mind. At the same time, the brush in his hand constantly waved. Along with the spirit energy of heaven and earth, words that seemed to have spirituality appeared, as if they were jumping on the paper. In the courtyard, a man in a green robe with a straight back, holding a brush in one hand and silently writing something on the spirit paper. The surrounding spirit energy of heaven and earth naturally gathered, showing a light blue mist lingering. Suddenly, he looked over. He was like an immortal. Chapter 269. After the Feather Immortal sect obediently delivered the items. A few days later, the other sects also delivered their items one after another. After obtaining these items, the Origin School's resources instantly skyrocketed. Because the items that the Origin School obtained were definitely not as simple as the resources of 8 great sects of the realm of spirit. If one were to seriously calculate, it would be enough to obtain the resources of 10 great sects of the realm of spirit. As for where the additional resources came from, it was easy to understand without much thought. After obtaining these resources, Qin Shujian chose another 3 low divine level techniques, gathering all 7 techniques in one go. On the summit of Mount Liang, a man in a green robe sat cross-legged. The originally buried spirit stones had entered the mountain when Mount Liang leveled up. Together with the spirit energy of the world, they nourished the mountain. However, compared to the current 900-meter tall mountain, the effect of 2 spirit stones in a short period of time was negligible. After all, no matter how powerful spirit stones were, there was a limit to how much spirit energy a spirit stone could attract. However, money was easy to obtain, but spirit stones were hard to find. Qin Shujian wanted to collect more spirit stones. Unfortunately, even in the Qingyun Trading Company, there were no spirit stones. One must know that spirit stones were nurtured by the world. Not to mention that they were extremely rare. Those who obtained them would not sell them. After all, if a spirit stone was used properly, it could be treated as a legacy treasure. It was equivalent to having an endless supply of spirit energy for people to absorb. On the summit of Mount Liang, dense light shrouded the mountain. It was as if there was an illusory spirit god swallowing the spirit energy of the world. At the same time, Qin Shujian was also receiving system notifications. You have cultivated diligently. The Flying Celestial Temple's Taoist scripture has reached the 2nd stage. You have cultivated diligently. The Flying Celestial Temple's Taoist scripture has reached the 3rd stage. You have cultivated diligently. You have cultivated diligently. The Flying Celestial Temple's Taoist scripture has reached the 11th stage. After reaching the peak of the 6th level of the spiritual martial realm, the speed of cultivation was enough to make all the basic realm, and even true martial realm geniuses blush with shame. It took him less than half a month to do so. Qin Shujian had upgraded all 6 cultivation methods to the level of Zhenwu chapter. As the cultivation method entered the Zhenwu chapter, although the cultivation progress slowed down, it was still increasing at a considerable speed. Another half a month passed. The Flying Celestial Temple Taoist scripture had directly reached the 6th level of true martial arts. It was only a step away from reaching the 7th level of true martial arts and officially entering the physical invulnerability stage. Flying Celestial Temple Taoist scripture. It was a cultivator who visualized the Tao in his mind as a foundation, and then visualized it to increase his own strength. This kind of cultivation method, it required an extreme amount of willpower. At the same time, he also needed to create a sufficiently powerful existence. On the Flying Celestial Temple Taoist scripture, there was a visualization diagram for people to use to cultivate. However, Qin Shujian did not use the visualization diagram in the Flying Celestial Temple Dao scripture. Instead, he used his own body as the foundation and viewed himself as the great Tao. He used this to visualize himself and increase his strength. Such a method. Perhaps the prerequisite was that the improvement would be very slow, but the further one progressed, the greater the benefits. Of course, this also required the person who visualized himself to have sufficient confidence in his own strength. Otherwise, it would not be of much use. Since Qin Shujian came to this world, he had never been defeated. After fighting and killing, his heart had nurtured a firm belief and he could be considered an expert. Therefore, it was not a big problem for him to visualize himself as the foundation. Except for Qin Shujian, the bow of heaven and earth, the third-grade golden lotus, and the blood of 1,000 mountains were also absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. After reaching the level of a Tao artifact, the effect of absorbing spiritual energy was minimal. However, a Tao artifact could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from all directions. It was not only beneficial to the Tao artifact itself, it was also greatly beneficial to the entire mountain gate. For this reason, Qin Shujian also threw out the remaining 8 idle Tao artifacts. After setting up a confinement formation around them, he allowed them to absorb spiritual energy and nourish themselves. In this way, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in Sektuan's main vein was more than a few times richer than before. The richer the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the more beneficial it was to the cultivation of the people in the sect. All of a sudden, Qin Shujian retracted his divine sense and then stood up to look into the distance. His brows furrowed slightly. As for the bow of heaven and earth on the other side, it had also stopped absorbing spiritual energy and floated to his side. In the perception of the man in the bow, in a place that could not be seen by the naked eye, there seemed to be a 7-colored light lingering in it. Heaven and earth barrier! There was no way Qin Shujian would ever forget this 7-colored light. When he was at the end of the Liang Mountain spirit domain, he had seen the existence of the heaven and earth barrier with his own eyes. Or rather, most of the people in the Liang Mountain spirit domain were familiar with the heaven and earth barrier. One had to know that this place was near the end of the world. Anyone who had a trace of curiosity in their heart would go to the end of the world to investigate. Naturally, they would be able to see the existence of the heaven and earth barrier. However, the heaven and earth barrier had always been in a state between reality and illusion. If one did not get close, one would not be able to sense the existence of the barrier. But now, Qin Shujian was on Liang Mountain and felt the existence of the heaven and earth barrier through the spirit god. This was clearly not normal. He looked at the bow of heaven and earth on the side. His heart slightly moved, and he immediately asked, "It seems that you have also sensed the existence of the heaven and earth barrier. Do you know why the heaven and earth barrier has such an abnormality?" "I know." A heavy aura involuntarily emitted from the bow of heaven and earth. An old voice also came from it. "The heaven and earth barrier covers all directions. Unless it is near the end of the world, it will not appear in front of people. However, there is a situation where the heaven and earth barrier has an abnormality. That is, a new area is about to be born." After the bow of heaven and earth finished speaking, Qin Shujian's pupils shrank. He immediately looked into the distance again and said in a deep voice, "You mean an ordinary realm is about to be born?" An ordinary realm is about to be born. This was not something that was worth being shocked about. But what really shocked him was that the speed of the birth of an ordinary realm was too fast. According to Qin Shujian's original plan, for an ordinary realm to be born, it would take at least a few decades, or at most a few hundred years. Now that this situation had occurred, it would definitely not take too long. "In your opinion, how long will it take for an ordinary realm to be born?" "If it is slow, it will take at least a year, and if it is fast, it will take a few months." "An ordinary realm will definitely be born." The bow of heaven and earth's tone also became serious. "This area has been promoted to the true domain, and then the spirit domain. It has been affected by the spirit chi of heaven and earth many times, causing the surrounding areas to grow greatly. Correspondingly, the birth of an ordinary realm has been brought forward. To tell the truth, even with the bow of heaven and earth's knowledge, it was still shocked by the current situation. Because in its memory, such a thing had never happened before. The Liang Mountain spirit domain's location was too strange. It happened to be at the edge of the world. The spirit chi of heaven and earth poured in many times, causing the birth of an ordinary realm to be accelerated by a lot. Hearing this, Qin Shijian's heart sank again. If it was slow, it would take at least a year, and if it was fast, it would take a few months. Everything was estimated according to the fastest plan. In a few months, a new ordinary realm would be born at the edge of the Liang Mountain spirit domain. This was a very important matter. The birth of an ordinary realm. It meant the birth of an evil spirit. Although quite a number of demons had died at his hands, Qin Shijian would not underestimate them just because of that. After all, the reason why he killed the evil spirits was because they could not display their strength under the shackles of the ordinary realm. Secondly, they had just broken the seal and were in a severely injured state. If a new ordinary realm was born, then he would have to face the evil spirits at their peak. Evil spirits, even the weakest of them, had stepped into the heaven realm. The most important thing was, Qin Shijian could not let the evil spirits out of the range of the ordinary realm. This was because once they left the ordinary realm, they would directly enter the spirit domain. The shackles of the spirit domain could even be broken by prominent sage cultivators. In the eyes of the evil spirits, it would be dispensable. When the time came, if they were not careful, a monstrous demon disaster would engulf the entire Liang Mountain spirit domain. If it was serious, it could even affect the entire Baiyun prefecture, or even the great Zhao 13 prefectures. Trouble! This was the only thought in Qin Shijian's mind. Yes. Trouble. If he was not an Array Dao Grandmaster, he might have considered packing up Yuanzhong and evacuating first. However, as an Array Dao Grandmaster, Qin Shijian did not have much confidence in his heart. An Array Dao Grandmaster was comparable to a Heaven Realm cultivator. This was only a rumor in the outside world. However, he was not sure if it was really the same as a Heaven Realm cultivator. Moreover, even if it was really comparable to a Heaven Realm cultivator, the Heaven Realm could not be a simple realm with no difference in levels. To put it bluntly, or with his current strength, there was no clear boundary. This was the first time Qin Shijian had encountered a situation like the Liang Mountain spirit domain. After all, in a spirit domain, the surroundings were mostly surrounded by the true domain, or even the great domain. Even the worst could be connected to the ordinary realm. However, if it was like the Liang Mountain spirit domain, which was directly connected to the limits of heaven and earth, it was probably the only place in the entire great Zhao 13 prefectures. However, there were advantages and disadvantages to the ordinary realm. The advantage was that there were many treasures in the newly created ordinary realm. Yuanzhong, being close to the water pavilion, had the opportunity to enter first and plunder the resources. As for the disadvantages, that could only be the danger of the evil spirits. Although he was worried, Qin Shijian didn't feel any fear. No matter what, he was still an Array Dao Grand Master. Even if the ordinary realm really came into being, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Even if he could not deal with the evil spirits, protecting Yuanzhong would not be a problem. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.